ties it for the Blues. 10:02 to go in the third period. It's been a heck of a game by Broberg, who picks up the assist on the game-tying goal. Kyrou bringing it out. Look out, lost the handle, moving it to the red line. Lawton gets the line. Over to the near wing. Farabee, and they score. Kyrou, solid a game as he had. Lost the handle before the red line, and the Flyers have made it a 2-1 game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had a hard-fought game there. Nice, great goal there by Walks' line, and got us back in. And then, I could have just been more direct there. Yeah, I mean, I just had the puck, and I just tried to skate with it a little laddery, and kind of hopped on me, and I should have just been more direct there.
Our compete level was a lot higher. We won more puck battles. We were getting to the interior. We put a lot of pucks to the net, and credit to them. They were able to block a lot, and we missed some pretty good opportunities. It's a positive, but we got to find more ways to get pucks to the net and create more opportunities.
That's what it sounded like right here on 101 ESPN last night. The Blues lose on the road, finish out this road trip, unfortunately, with a losing record. They go 1-3 against Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Philadelphia. Lose last night 2-1 on the road. And Alex, I feel like sometimes our role on this show, at least the way that I approach it, and I know that I can be a little bit of a contrarian by nature.
That wasn't the word I was thinking of, but sure.
Whatever the word was.
Is that like a Bradford word where like contrarian means something else that I'm thinking of?
Nope. Contrarian means I go the opposite direction. I zig while others zag. It's kind of my go-to,
The source would have got to my word.
And so when I think about my role on the show, it's never as good as people think it is. It's also never as bad as people think it is. And right now, I don't think it's as bad for the Blues as a lot of people are suggesting. I think this team is doing a lot of things well. I think last night, when you look at that game, that is the way that the Blues need to play this year in order to win. Now, they didn't come out on the winning end of that game, and Jordan Kyrou's got to be smarter in that spot. Hey, man, let's get the puck into the offensive zone. Let's chip it in deep, go to work, see what happens from there. You got to find a way to at least escape that game, given the context of it, with losing your last two games. You played a solid game all around at that point in time. Just live to fight another day. And he tried to make a play, tried to do a little bit too much. It ends up going in the other direction. I'm sure we're going to get on the text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. People are going to be mad at Kyrou today. I thought overall he played a pretty good game. Again, I think most of this season he's played a solid team game for the Blues. Unfortunately, in the worst possible moment, he had his worst play of the game. Alex, what'd you take away from that one as the Blues lose once again 3 straight losses on the road?
Yeah, you of course isolate that one, and Kurtz references this all the time. Bobby Plager always said the worst opponent that you go up against is the clock, and that was a game that just Kyrou didn't check where the team was and thought you could try and put it on your shoulders in that one, but that wasn't my general takeaway. I thought that was more in line with what the Blues were trying to play. That game felt a lot more like they played against the Toronto Maple Leafs than how they played against Montreal or Ottawa. The difference, you did not find the back of the net. And as Drew Bannister mentioned, some credit goes to Philadelphia that got in the way of a total of 24 blocked shots from the St. Louis Blues. They were putting a ton of attempts on net. Kyrou had 9 of them. You just didn't find the back of it. Now, was some of this to where they were still playing a little perimeter hockey? I think so. Was some of this they just didn't have that push in terms of the forecheck and that fight in front of the net? I think so. But overall, from 2 of those 3 periods, you dominated Philadelphia. You had more high-danger scoring chances than them. You had more puck possession than them. You had more shots than them in terms of attempts. Sometimes you just don't get past the goaltender. It's frustrating because of the bigger picture where you left that road trip 1-3. And it's not just 1-3. Because when you say Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Philadelphia, 1-3, you're thinking, okay, well, one of those losses was to Toronto. No, you beat Toronto. You lost to Philly, Ottawa, and Montreal. That's the part that probably stings the most. But Ken Hitchcock used to always reference this. Sometimes you win games that you probably deserved to lose, and sometimes you lose games you probably deserved to win. And last night felt like one of those games you lost because you deserved to win it.
I felt like it was a 50-50 game. I thought that one, there have been games that I've seen from the Blues so far this year that they have lost that I was like, man, they played really well and they just didn't come out on the winning end. Last night I felt like it was 50-50. I think either of those teams would have been fine to win it. I didn't, you look at the deserve to win meter. I thought the Blues were haven't seen what it looked like from last night. I would guess it's around 50-50 from both teams. I thought they were fine. I didn't think it was a bad game. I also didn't think it was overwhelmingly great by the Blues. I thought that was in line with what I've kind of expected out of this team this year. They didn't have the most high danger chances or anything like that. They also limited Philadelphia from having a ton of high danger chances. T-Bone, what'd you take away from it?
Yeah, I thought they played fine. I felt like they were on the outside a lot with a lot of their scoring chances and at times maybe lacking a little bit of zone time. But for the most part, I mean, the first and third period, they played fairly well. But you're right. I mean, you're spot on. This is the games you're going to have to win. I remember a couple years ago when Craig Berube said, hey, we're going to have to win games 2-1. I remember looking at the roster going, what on earth is he talking about? They are a high-flying, no defensive team. It's the opposite than what it was 2-3 years ago. They're going to have to win games by a score of 2-1. They're going to have to be in those gritty games. I thought they were just fine last night. You know, I was hoping for maybe a little bit more from them after coming off of the big blowout loss to the Ottawa Senators, so maybe I just had too much of high expectations for that game. But, I mean, it was a 50-50 game. Just looked up the deserve to win meter. It was right at 50%.
There you go.
So they were fine last night. I don't think there's anything that I really took away from it that was in the negative, and I don't know if I really took anything away from it outside of, like, hey, Broberg's really awesome, but we've talked about that.
Alex, when you think about how you feel about this team at this point, because we're going into the month of November now, we are through the first 11 games of the season. They are 5-6 on the year. Last year at this point, they were 5-1, so had one more point at this point of the season. Honestly, given last night and the way that thing ended, you should be basically the exact same overall record and points-wise as you were at this point last year. How do you feel about this team right now compared to the way that you felt about them at this point last year? I know that can be skewed because we know how the year went after that, but this point last year, if you can recall, how were you feeling about that team as they were 5-1?
Last year felt like this team is going to be fighting for another top 10 pick. There was nothing to get excited about other than Robert Thomas. And Robert Thomas at that time last year was a point-per-game player. He was in the plus. You're like, cool, you got your number one centerman. But your defense still was somewhat of a liability. You did not have depth of scoring in terms of guys that you looked around and you were sitting like, okay, you can see what the brighter picture looks like for this Blues team, with the exception of, I guess, Jake Neighbors. But at the time last year, he was on your fourth line playing with Oscar Sundqvist. So you didn't really get the goal-scoring Jake Neighbors that we saw at the end of the season. If I look at this team right now, I feel night and day better than where they were at 11 games into the season last year, mostly because you've got the pieces that are now forming the core of what your roster is. You've got your number one centerman. I know he's injured right now, but we all agree Robert Thomas is that guy. You found your number one defenseman. Your defense is significantly better than where you were last season because your top four realistically can go toe-to-toe with any team. They've done it against Vegas. They've done it against Winnipeg, Minnesota. You saw it again last night with Philadelphia. So your defense has improved. And now you're starting to see a little bit more of the depth of scoring on offense. You've got Dylan Holloway with 4 goals. You've got Jake Neighbors, who's reclaiming that spot that he was last season. It comes back to, which I guess is still somewhat problematic, it comes back to your best players need to be your best players on the ice.
And that's why, like, I think defensively I'm 100% with you. I do see where they're going with their defense. I think defensively they are night and day better than where they were a year ago. I just look at them from the offensive standpoint, and I understand, like, look, Holloway's played pretty well. Jake Neighbors still kind of solidifying himself in this top 6 role. Joseph was good when he was healthy. Texas had some moments. I still look at them, and I just don't know if I feel like, as a whole, I'm starting to see where they are going. You know, I don't know if I feel a ton better, much better than where they were a year ago. Just because Holloway hitting his ceiling, Neighbors hitting his ceiling's not exiting the retool for the St. Louis Blues. It's Kyrou, it's Buchnevich, it's Thomas. Those 3 guys, and I understand Thomas is hurt, but we talked about it. He was not playing well before his injury, in my opinion. Those are the guys that drive you through the retool. And again, it's the same situation from a year ago. And I understand some will say, hey, Bush is playing out of position. At some point, Bush has got to start putting up some production, though. You know, and right now, he's not doing that. Kyrou, though, I think his game looks better all around. He's not scoring goals. And what's Kyrou paid to do? Not play defense, it's to score goals. That's where I look at them, and I just don't know if and maybe I'm getting the retool fatigue. I just don't know if they are that much better.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
I just don't know if they're that much better. I don't see where they're going. Yeah. I don't see how they're getting out of this retool based on what I've seen.
I mean, the Thomas thing, you can't judge it. I mean, he did not look good, but he's injured. Pavel Buchnevich, I mean, I'm 50-50 on this because on one hand, I agree with you. Like, look, you're a top-line guy. Regardless of position you're in, you got to produce. Even if you're playing center and you're not used to it and it's not your natural position, you still got to produce. But Pavel Buchnevich is supposed to be a 30 to 35 goal scorer, and guess where you're not going to be able to do that? At a position where you are not only driving the offense, but you are also the number one responsibility on the defensive side to shut down the other team's top line. There's so much going on for a Pavel Buchnevich who is not used to that position. It's hard to continue to produce that offense. But I also look at that top six that was thrown out there last night, and you tell me when this team is supposed to be competing if this player is playing in your top six. Alex Texier, Brandon Saad, Dylan Holloway. Those are three guys that are all third or fourth line players. Now, I know Robert Thomas is not there, but guess what you're still missing if Robert Thomas is there? You're missing a number 2 center and a top 6 forward. And right now, I don't even know if it's just a top 6 forward. You're missing somebody who, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, I think it was when you and I did the show, T-Bone, you're missing a 40-goal scorer on your team, or at least a 35-goal scorer on this team.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's what they're missing.
You're missing the Matvei Michkov. Now, I know he didn't score last night, but guess what every team is doing right now for a Michkov who was just named the player of the month? Planning for that guy. You're missing the dude that when he steps on the ice, how are we going to stop him from scoring? And I don't think you have that guy on your roster right now.
I agree, but we all knew that. Like, this is not news to any of us. And that's why T-Bone, this is why I think that you're going through some rebuild fatigue, retool fatigue, whatever you want to call it.
Refresh.
None of this is a surprise. Like, we knew where this team was at. We knew Jordan Kyrou was not the guy that you're referencing. Pavel Buchnevich is not that guy. Buchnevich, by the way, is also just a notoriously slow starter. 2021, 3 goals, 5 points in the first 10 games of the season. 2022, 1 goal, 6 points in the first 10 games of the season. 2023, 1 goal, 4 points in the first 10 games of the season. This year, 3 goals, 6 points in the first 10 games of the season. This has been one of his best starts since coming over to the St. Louis Blues.
In like 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the way that he operates early on in the season. He gets through a slow start, and then by the end of the season, he's going to be a 25-plus goal scorer. He's going to get you 60-plus points. He's going to be a really good player. He's not playing his position, and I know that we're saying that's an excuse. I think it's an explanation. I think this is who Buch is. He's not a center. And I understand why they're doing it. It's purely out of necessity. The same reason that Dylan Holloway is playing center for the Blues right now. They don't have guys that can play down the middle for them this season, so you've got to have them playing in the middle. Anyways, I think Holloway has mostly been fine there. He played at center in the AHL as well, so it's more of a natural position for him. It's been like 8 years since Buch got legit full-time reps at the center position. So I view it a little bit differently for those two guys, but just looking at some of the nerdy numbers from this year versus last year, guys, it's a no contest. This is a better team than they were at this point last year. Corsi rating, which is essentially how often are you putting pucks on net compared to your opposition, right? This point last year was at 41%, which was the worst rate in all of hockey. The single worst team in the NHL at driving offense a year ago. This year, they're middle of the pack at 49%. Last year, if you look at shots for percentage, they were at 42%. This year, 48%. If you look at goals against per 60 minutes, last year, if you look at the expected numbers, they were like 2.9 goals against per 60. This year, 2.6 goals against per 60. What made them have the better start last year than what you would have expected then? Very simple. They were saving shots at just a ridiculous rate. The goaltending at this point last year was saving 94% of the shots that they saw at 5-on-5. That is completely unsustainable. Nobody in the NHL will finish the season with a 94% save rate by the end of the year. This year, you're at 90%, which is very reasonable and should be sustainable for this team given what we know that they have in net all year long. I think what you're seeing this year is just a more sustainable model. I think this is who they are. They're a roughly 500 hockey team. They're doing it right now without Robert Thomas. They're doing it with Pavel Buchnevich playing out of position. They're doing it with a snake bit version of Jordan Kyrou. I think this is a more enjoyable product to watch. I think this is a better overall team. I think you've added Philip Broberg, who last night, once again, it seems like every night that dude does at least one thing that you look back on and say, that's a top 4 defenseman long-term for the Blues. So you've added new pieces to the mix that are going to be a part of your long-term future. I think the goaltending looks more sustainable than it was last year. You're much better in your own end. You still have issues with both the PK and the penalty or in the power play, but I just think this is a better team. It's a better team with legitimate questions long term. I agree with you, T-Bone. They're missing that dude, but I knew they were missing that guy coming into the season. I had those questions before. I still have them today. Jordan Kyrou's a second-line winger. I think Pavel Buchnevich is a top-line winger, but needs another dude, like a 40-goal scorer next to him with Thomas. those are things that you'll have to insert as we go along here. How do you acquire that guy? I don't know. Via trade or free agency, most likely. I don't think he's currently on the roster, though.
Yeah.
But I think we knew that.
And I know it was yesterday's topic, but the reason that I'm not in retool fatigue is because, once again, you identified another piece to the puzzle this season. You identified that top line, or that top pair defenseman.
Absolutely.
Last year, you identified the top centerman, and honestly, you identified a future top 6 winger in Jake Neighbors. Now, it's a matter of, can you identify the next piece? And I think the second line center is Dvorsky. It's just going to be a little bit. It might be a year. I don't know if Jimmy Snuggerud's that guy, but the reason the retool fatigue's not there yet is because I haven't seen Jimmy Snuggerud yet. When I see Snuggerud at the end of the season or see him next year, then the fatigue can set in. But at that point, you've garnered enough assets as the Blues to say, this isn't the guy, let's go find the guy.
I also think it's like complaining about the Cardinals previously, not having a number 1 starter. Yes, it's a totally fair complaint. But the Cardinals also didn't have a 3, 4, or 5 starter. What the Blues have done is they've started to fill out the rest of their lineup to where you can see where the holes are, where the holes remain. Like, they're missing a top 4 defenseman right now, long term, because Shooter's not going to be that guy. He is right now, but long term, he's not going to be that player. Okay, you can now identify we've got 3 of our other top 4 defensemen. We need that one guy. You can look at the top 6 and long term say, okay, we're missing a second line center and a top line winger. But we feel pretty good about most of the rest of our lineup right now. So now you can go in and, instead of being one of those cartoons where you're in a boat with a million different holes that you're trying to, suddenly the cartoon has like 17 different arms that are plugging all the holes. You don't have to do that anymore. Now you're like, okay, we can identify that as something we need to go acquire. We can identify this as something we need to go acquire. And as a GM, president of hockey operations, that is a much better place to be at. And now you're starting to see the vision for the long term. In my opinion, T-Bone, I know we're on differing sides of this. I see the vision.
I don't see the pillars.
Well, the hard part is you don't see the guys in the minors the same way that you do in other sports, to where you can see them develop. And like in baseball, you can watch them in AAA. It's hard to keep track of guys that are playing in the OHL or over in Sweden right now. And like it or not, some of those guys are part of the solution from the Blues.
But they might not be your star.
They might.
And that's
no,
where
but you said a top 4 defenseman.
I think they've got a ton of third liners and then a ton of second liners, and I include some of the guys that are coming. You know, and I just don't know where the stars are coming from. And I just feel like the pillars, and look, maybe it is because I'm just not seeing what the puzzle piece is that they're going to bring in, you know.
I think it all comes back. Do you see Thomas as a top line center?
I think he needs to prove it again this year, and it's hard to do it now since he's hurt.
But point blank, do you view Thomas as a top line center?
He might be a top line center. I don't know if he's a guy I want to build around, though.
And that is where the questions are for you. Because I think, for me, I view him last year from what we saw. He's a top-line center. He's had a really rough start to the season, both with the injury and prior to that injury. I didn't think he looked like himself this season. If he doesn't become a top-line center, you've got serious problems here.
Yeah, well, then the retool's a rebuild.
Yeah.
Then you blow it up and you start from scratch again.
No doubt. And so I think that's where a disconnect is, T-Bone. I think Buchnevich is a top-line winger. I think Thomas is a top-line center. I think Kyrou is a second-line winger. And I think what you're missing right now, I think Neighbors is a second-line winger. I think what you're missing right now is a second-line center and a top-line winger. And if you can fill in those pieces long-term, you're in a good spot. But if you don't view those guys that I mentioned as top-line players with Buch and Thomas, or you have got serious questions about them, then suddenly all of this becomes well, you've built the depth. Where are the stars, and can you win this way? And can you go out and acquire those guys via trade and free agency? That's a really hard way to go about things. So I understand it's a tough place to be at. Retools are not fun to watch in season. They're much more fun to see during the off season than they are when you actually have to watch 82 games of this. It's going to be the same thing with the Cardinals, boys and girls. It's going to be a long refresh season for the St. Louis Cardinals if we're going about every game where we're like, okay, where are we at with this right now? It's easy. It feels like it took less time when you get to the end of it, but when you're in the middle of it, it takes a while.
This might be a question to get into at another time since we got to go to break, but and it's hard because the Cardinals are just starting the refresh.
It's refreshing.
Who do you feel better about long term as of like today? Because, like, the Cardinals, they have some of the young pieces already here.
I think they're in
for
really
the Blues,
similar
you're
spots.
kind of waiting for 2 big pieces to get up here.
But it's too different because you don't think Thomas is a star. I look at Thomas as a number 1 center.
I need to clarify what I think on Thomas. I think I think he showed he was a star last year. I think where my concern is I want to see it back-to-back years, And the other thing is it was a small sample size early on. He wasn't lifting up guys around him. All we kept talking about is where's the guys with Thomas, where's the guys with Thomas. And my honest thought for one game I saw of him in person was he was the worst guy on his line. And he wasn't lifting guys up around him.
To that question, and this, again, different perspective, you've identified two of the major pieces that you need. And I know small sample size, but I believe you've identified two of the major pieces you need to win. And it's a number one defenseman and a number one center. And then the rest you build around there.
Yeah, I think they're in the same spot. I think you've got questions about Gorman and about Walker, and I think that you have a Mason Wynn, but the question is that a leading candidate to get you out of this thing, similar to with Thomas? Like, can Thomas be the guy on a championship contending team? That's a real question mark for the St. Louis Blues. I think they're in remarkably similar spots, but they get talked about differently because of the differences in the sport, and also just the Blues have earned more good grace from the fan base than the Cardinals have over the years, which is deserved given the way that they've both operated business-wise. But I think they're in remarkably similar spots, personally. All right, he's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. That is Alex Ferrario. We are broadcasting live today at the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, where the Blues are going to be taking the ice coming up here in just about an hour for their morning skate. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get to our football pick'em. You guys can get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the way to do so. You can check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That's where the graveyard chat is off and running. Coming up next, MLB Trade Rumors put together their list of the best trade candidates in Major League Baseball this offseason. You might be surprised by this. Cardinals have like 4 of the top 25 candidates. We'll tell you who those are next year on 101 ESPN.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
It is officially off-season mode for the St. Louis Cardinals. Yesterday, they announced that they are going to be declining the team option on Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Keenan Middleton. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The top trade targets in all of Major League Baseball, according to MLB Trade Rumors, a website where they do really excellent work during the offseason. If you guys are baseball fans and you want to be caught up with what's going on, that is the place to go. Their top trade target is Garrett Crochet. Same guy that we talked about going into the trade deadline. He is once again going to be at the top of all of these lists. But beyond that, the Cardinals are extraordinarily well represented on this list, ladies and gentlemen. Ryan Helsley is the second highest rated trade target this offseason, according to MLB Trade Rumors. Beyond that, number 3 is Eric Fetty. Number 10 is Nolan Arenado. Number 11 is Sonny Gray. Number 12, Wilson Contreras. Number 20 is Brendan Donovan. And number 21 on this list is Nolan Gorman. That is 7 Cardinals in the top 21 in terms of this national list for the best trade targets in Major League Baseball this offseason.
I don't know about you guys, but that's a refreshing list.
Alex, when you think about what the Cardinals could or will do this offseason, Helsley, Fetty, Arenado, Gray, Contreras, Donovan, Gorman, how many of those guys do you think will be traded by the Cardinals this offseason?
Man, so Helsley, I would put a for sure.
Yep.
I would put a for sure on I would put it for sure on Nolan Arenado. It's just going to really come down to, can you trade him?
Yep.
But they're going to be doing everything they can to move on from that player. And I would say one of Donovan or Gorman. I don't know who. My gut would say you trade a Gorman, but Chaim Bloom coming in says, no, we're going to work with this guy and redevelop him. And then not Wilson Contreras, so who?
Donovan, Gorman, Gray.
Gray. Oh, yeah, Gray's the other one. So I would say Gray for sure, Helsley for sure, Arenado definitely. Those are the 3 that I will say will get traded. It's just going to come down to, will they accept to where they're going?
T-Bone?
I think 3 of those guys get moved, and I agree on Helsley. I think he's a lock to get traded. I think Gray's going to be traded as well. I don't think Arenado's getting moved. I think the third one's going to be Contreras. I just don't see who's picking up the Arenado contract. I think it's a terrible contract right now. And if I'm another baseball team, I would not want that on my hands, even if the Cardinals ate money on that.
So I tend to agree with you, but I did find the write-up from MLB Trade Rumors on Arenado to be interesting. I always think it's important to find what the national perspective is on these guys that we watch day to day, because sometimes it can differ slightly. They said, with Arenado's 34th birthday looming in April, it's fair to question whether there's a true rebound remaining in his bat. Even if there isn't, this version of Arenado is still quite useful, particularly given the free agent market and how thin it is at third base. The Rockies are paying another $5 million of what's left on his deal, so an acquiring team would be committing to $69 million over the next 3 seasons. For a strong defensive third baseman with 15 to 25 home run pop and terrific bat-to-ball skills, he only struck out 14% of the time last year. That's not an egregious price to pay. And if Arenado's bat does tick back upward, it has a chance to be an absolute bargain. Arenado does have a full no-trade clause and declined to exercise an opt-out in his contract after 2021. He said at the time he was committed to winning in St. Louis, but now that the team is gearing up for a full youth movement, it is possible that he rethinks that stance. The Cardinals, looking to trade payroll and create an opportunity for younger players, seem likely at least to approach him about that possibility. That suggests to me that nationally people might have a differing opinion on the Arenado contracts than what we do here locally, because we've seen it every single day, and it grows nauseating that the player that they thought they were getting is not the player that they have. And now you think about it from another team's perspective, like I brought up the Houston Astros as the team that makes a lot of sense if they don't bring back Bregman. If you told me he becomes a $20 million effectively player for them per year, and he's a 280 hitter with a little bit of pop, and he plays a little better at that stadium because of the Crawford box, I could see that working for them. And their expectations going in would not be the expectations that the Cardinals had going in, because the Cardinals traded for him while he was still in their prime. They know they're buying potentially low on a bounce-back candidate. So it's a very differing opinion on who they're going to get. I think he might end up having a little more value than we think. I don't expect you to get a good return for Arenado.
I don't expect a return for Arenado.
But I think you might be able to move on for more of the money than what we would probably anticipate.
So I get, like, that we've seen him every day. I just, from the national perspective, I don't get it because, like, there's nothing to seem to signal that his bat's going to bounce back. I mean, there's a lot of blue on this Baseball Savant page.
It's always been a lot of blue on his Baseball Savant page, to be fair. He's not a guy that typically is like a average exit.
And frankly, if I'm
dog.
another team, I've seen in the past how guys don't look great in the Cardinal system, and then you go out there and you bring them in and they go off.
If he was a kid, that's fair. But this is a guy that fell apart here in St. Louis, and to me, he's clearly hitting the age curve and hitting it hard. I don't see his bat bouncing back. There is no pop in that bat lift that I can see. And the other thing, too, about him is, look, his defense has kind of slowly gotten worse. You know, he's not the same.
I thought he was great defensively this year.
He was really good this year.
I think he was good. I don't think he was the same great that he was prior. I think his defense is taking a step back as well. So now I'm not even getting, like, the Gold Glove caliber defender in Nolan Arenado. He may end up winning it. I think he's a finalist, if I remember correctly.
I would vote for him.
I just don't – I don't think he's the same guy he was, which was clearly and obviously the best third baseman in all of baseball.
I agree with that.
And
He's 33.
Now you don't have the bat to go with it. And I just don't see the bat bounce back. Like, hey, if the Cardinals are able to trade him, good for them. Because I would be trying to get out of the contract as well. I would be shocked, though, if he gets moved.
Over the last 2 seasons, I know people hate this. He's been worth 5 wins above replacement.
Oh.
I know, too. I know.
Superstar.
Whatever we think about the statistic, front offices place value in it. So forget what we
why they can't build a good team.
Forget what we think of it. Front offices will look at that and say, that's worth like $20 million. It's worth $15 million. Something like that. And so if you're another team and you look at that and you say, okay, over the next 3 years, we're paying $23 million per year for him. We'll have the Cardinals pay $5 million a year for it. I mean, otherwise, pretty much what we would expect in terms of the value of a player that's giving us this kind of production. And if you're the Astros, you're not expecting him to come in and be a star. Man, I've got Yordan Alvarez. I've got Jose Altuve. I've got Kyle Tucker. I've got other players that profile as being better hitters than Nolan Arenado in my lineup next year. I just need him to come in and be a really solid 6-hole hitter, drive in runs, put the ball in the air when the situation calls for it, and give me an above-league average bat with great defense, despite T-Bone's questions about it, at third base for me next year. I think there's more value in him than what we would otherwise expect, given what he's been in his career. So I think he ends up getting dealt this offseason. I've convinced myself at this point, I think Ryan Helsley goes. I think Nolan Arenado goes. I think you end up trading one of your starting pitchers, and I can't put my finger on who it is right now. I could see it, even though yesterday I made the case not to do this, I could see them saying the path of least resistance is Steven Matz, because he doesn't have a no-trade clause. Maybe somebody else sees the value that I talked about yesterday in him as a potential bounce-back candidate, and boom, he ends up being the guy that goes. If you did that, you're cutting $55 million in payroll. And that's on top of the
Soto.
And that's on top of the $50-ish million that they cut from yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the direction that I could see them go.
Soto's getting 70, so now you're saving 30 if you go get that star player. Soto said he is open to every single team.
I think the number one thing this team needs to do is trade Nolan Arenado. Like, if they did nothing else this offseason, I would just prioritize trading Nolan Arenado because it makes everything else fit better for them going into next year.
He'd be number 2 on that list. Number 1 on that list would be Ryan Helsley. I don't think Ryan Helsley fits this team next season, and I think he brings you the most in return that you can put in your system and start.
What if I told
growth?
you there is no trade right now that includes a top 100 prospect for Ryan Helsley? I don't know if that'll be the case or not, but if I told you, hey, the teams have come in because there are so many options on the market, whether via trade or free agency, like Tanner Scott's available. I don't have to trade a piece for him. I can just sign him for $15 million a year or whatever. What if there is no trade available right now for a top 100 prospect? Are you just trading him?
Yeah.
Anyways?
I would. And I would
in
try
that
to take
scenario, I might, I know it's risky, I might wait until the deadline. Because I think there is more potential for there to be a better return at the deadline, although fully acknowledging there's also risk that he gets hurt. But if you wait until the deadline,
and I would wait, that injury though is riskier because then, then you're not getting to get.
You could also QO him next year if you needed to, and then you either get a pick or he comes back at $20 million for the following season. I'm not trading him unless the return is right.
I agree. I would go probably, like you said, what's the number one piece you need to trade? To me, it would be Arenado. Because now I've freed up a spot in my lineup for someone like a Gorman to play at third base, go back to his natural position, and in my opinion, shed a bad contract. And I think that's what you're at this point in your life cycle. But I would probably have Helsley at 2. I would still trade him this offseason.
Even if there's no top 100 prospects in return.
I think it's too risky to try and wait him out, especially because he's a guy that's had injury issues in the past, and that's what would worry me. So I would say any pitcher that you have any conversation that has value, that's why I would trade Fetty, not wait till the deadline. And Gray. They need to be dealt in the offseason because you know what they are right now? They're healthy. You know what pitching can be in a month into the season? No idea.
And all three of them are coming off of really good seasons.
Yeah.
That's why you're trading them.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you guys want to get involved in the show, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. YouTube is available, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. We are starting a new month in our football pick'em challenge. Alex got punished the first month. I got punished this month. T-Bone still avoiding punishment. He's been close, but still avoiding punishment. We will begin our new month with our first picks coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Grit Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Disappointing one for the Blues last night. Good effort, but they lost 2-1 in Philadelphia. They tied it in the third period after being down 1-0 for basically the entire game. Nathan Walker with his first of the season, but with 3 minutes left, a costly turnover by Jordan Kyrou resulted in the game-winning goal for the Flyers, scored by Bobby Brink. Blues now 5-6 on the season. They're back in action tomorrow as they welcome in Craig Berube and the Maple Leafs. It'll be a 5 o'clock pregame and a 6 o'clock puck drop here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. And then on Sunday, we've got an NFL football Sunday. Bills and Dolphins will kick us off at 11 o'clock. Then Cardinals and Bears at 3:05. And Vikings and Colts rounding out the night for Sunday Night Football at 7:20. I'm Grit Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
I hate this. I hate this week. It's the worst week to try to make picks. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here at 101 ESPN.
Aren't you bad at every week?
I am. Early on, I felt pretty good about it, and not coincidentally, I didn't do horribly in the first month. And then last month, things got punched right in the noggin. Maybe the Adam's apple, depending on your perspective. Things went poorly. I will be punished accordingly. We are starting fresh. It is a new month. Fresh. I think things are going to go better this month.
Oh, there you go.
If you're new to this, we pick 3 games every weekend. College football, NFL, it's just against the spread. No props, no over-unders. Only real rule about it is it has to be done before we get back on the air on Monday. No Monday Night Football is available for you. So Friday night, Saturday, Sunday games, all on the table. Alex, we do it with a 1, a 2, and a 3-point play. What is your 1-point play going into this weekend?
All right, boys. As BK mentioned, I don't like this one, but I'm at least somewhat confident on it. I'm taking the Falcons -3. It's a home game. I think the Cowboys are just a disaster these days. I'm fully expecting this pick to just bite me in the rear end, but I think both Parsons and Diggs were dealing with something. Not sure if they're playing in this one. I think a -3 play for the Falcons on home field for Atlanta. That's my 1-point play.
I like that pick. That was one of my honorable mentions. I considered that one. Also, how about the fact that Parsons and I think it was Diggs did a podcast and didn't have Dak as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Would you?
That's awkward. I wouldn't have fired to go see him in the locker room.
They're not catching anything from him.
I guess. It was not great. All right, guys, for my 1-point play, I'm going to be in the NFL as well. Look, I think last week it was just about knocking off the rust. I think the Dolphins are going to be swimming up north to New York, baby, and they're going to go to Buffalo. They're going to cover the spread. I think you're finally going to see the pieces click together. They've got a good defense. Second game back with Tua. I think you're going to get Waddle more involved. I like the Dolphins +6 at the Buffalo Bills.
Do you have this one?
I think this is fascinating. I told you guys before we came back on the air, I think there is one game that we will all be selecting.
I think BK is with me.
I did not anticipate that we would be on opposite sides of that game because I also am going to be selecting a side in the Bills versus the Dolphins game. It is going to be my 3-point play.
Mine too!
And I am going with the Buffalo Bills as a 6-point favorite at home against the Dolphins. I think the Bills have a defense that can suffocate this Dolphins offense. Tyreek Hill came down with a bit of an injury this week. I don't know if he's going to be at 100% going into the weekend. I think Tua's obviously a much better option for them at quarterback. I just think the Bills are a significantly better team. I'm only giving up 6 points here. I think they win by 10+.
BK, asked me the last time the Dolphins beat the Bills in Buffalo in the regular season.
Alex, when was the last time that the Dolphins beat the Bills in the regular season in Buffalo?
December of 2016.
Oh, my God.
Gentlemen.
Do factor.
No, that is not a do factor. Plus, the high is supposed to be 55 degrees, and it's windy up in Buffalo. And guess what is never 55 degrees and windy? Miami. This one was my 3-point play as well.
All right. Well, I
talk about the swing in the opposite direction.
Yeah, boy,
T-Bone?
I can't wait for them to cover.
We will continue along here. What is your 2-point play.
All right. I don't think they're going to need a Hail Mary for this one, guys. My 2-point play this week, give me the Commanders on the road against the Giants. I can't believe this is only a 4-point line. The Giants are awful. They can't do anything offensively. They've only scored 1 touchdown at home this season. I think that trend will continue. I think Washington will win easily. So give me the Commanders -4 at the New York Giants.
That's my 2-point play.
Commanders.
Yep. See? And just so people don't think I'm like cheating, I texted it to my dad earlier so we know where I'm at. That was my 2-point play. I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a Hail Mary in this one. I don't think the Giants are any good. And I think Jaden Daniels, after overcoming the rib issue from last week and getting that victory, I think this team is just in a confidence mode right now, and that's going to be a easy walk-away victory for Washington.
All right. I did not touch that game because
I thought that was the game we'd all have.
I have
too.
I've been wrong on every Giants game so far this year. So
The G-Man!
I'm not picking for or against them any longer.
That's BK.
All right, so those are Alex's 3 picks for the week. Falcons -3, Commanders -4, and Bills -6. 3 favorites going into the weekend.
Didn't like that.
My 1-point play is going to be on the college side of things. T-Bone with a rare 2 NFL picks. We'll see what his third one is. My college pick for the weekend is Kansas State -12.5 on the road at Houston. I just think Houston's not very good, and I think Kansas State is really good. Like I know that's a super simplistic way to go about this. Houston got blown out by Kansas 2 weeks ago. And then last week against a backup quarterback with Utah, yeah, they win 17-14. They threw for all of 60 yards in the game.
Nice.
I'm not going to I'm not going to believe that is some kind of a sustainable model for them to win long term. I think K-State wins this one by 3 touchdowns. So give me Kansas State, and this is a 12.5 point line at home against Houston.
No, do 13.
See, I considered that one, but you got to remember, I took Kansas State last week and said, hey, they'll blow out Kansas. Kansas isn't very good, and they barely escaped with the win in that game.
Fair.
So I got scared.
That was a massive rivalry game. Throw out the records.
That's fair. My 3-point play, guys, the little duckies out in Oregon, they are the best team in the country. And you know who stinks in the Big Ten? The Michigan Wolverines. They can't even beat the Fighting Illini. And the forward pass has not been invented in the state of Michigan yet this year. So Oregon on the road. -14.5. It's a big spread. I don't see how Michigan covers this. Illinois, I thought, would cover 21.5. Oregon covered that by halftime. I think this is too low a spread. Give me Oregon -14.5.
Interesting. I think T-Bone might be overcompensating.
Oh, jeez.
for the Oregon game that he missed out on a couple of weeks ago. He felt there was some FOMO there.
A lot of talk
line
for the guy who's going to have eggs on his head in a week.
Totally fair,
Very
reasonable. True. I get it. All right, my 2-point play. I'm also going to the college football side of things. Tomorrow I am sticking in the Big Ten as well. Indiana's not getting the respect they deserve. At some point they will. They are not doing that right now. They are on the road. They're at Michigan State, a not-so-great football team. And it's only an 8-point line in favor of Indiana. It sounds like they might get their starting quarterback for this one as well.
That's why I avoided it. I was too concerned. I've seen BK fall for the quarterback's going to play or not going to play, because I considered that as my 3-point play, but then when I did more research and was still skeptical on the quarterback, I had to back out.
I don't care either way. I think their backup has shown at this point he's more than capable. I mean, the backup has been in there for a little bit now. I'm more than fine with either of those 2 quarterbacks playing. I think they're just a really good offense. They're a better team than Michigan State. I think people are overstating what they are with their backup quarterback. I think they're just a really good team. I think Indiana starts season 9-0, and they get a big win on the road at Michigan State tomorrow. I have 3 favorites. T-Bone has 2 favorites. Alex has 3 favorites. This is sure to win. All of us. We're going to do great.
When I was looking, I was like, I have to pick an underdog. But every underdog was like, I don't trust that. Like, the one underdog I was going to go with was +1.5 Bears. I don't trust that.
My line that I liked ended up moving too much by the time that we did our picks, so I didn't end up taking it. I like the Broncos +9.5, but that's down to 8 now. So I'm not going to take them at 8, but at 9.5, Ravens on the road at the Ravens. Right. I like them to cover the 9.5. 8's just too small.
Almost at the pick 'em with Rams and Seahawks too, because it was just a straight pick 'em. But I don't know who to pick.
I also liked Florida, but they were +18 earlier in the week. They're down to +15 now against Georgia. And so the lines that I really liked, they just moved a little bit.
So we said, well, all the favorites must win and win by their spread, obviously.
He's Alex, it's T-Bone. I'm BK.
Dolphins.
Those are our picks of the week. Fade, follow, do whatever you'd like. fading has been a pretty profitable way to go about things this year. It is our first week of the new month. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything, sports or otherwise, here on BK and Ferrario.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. It is Ask Us Anything. We do it each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. From the 314, guys, what do you think about Vandy being a touchdown underdog against Auburn going into this weekend? I was a little surprised by this line. Vanderbilt is on the road, 8-point underdog tomorrow against Auburn. I think it speaks to what I said after Mizzou played against Auburn, which is that they're not a bad football team. They just do stupid stuff. Like they just find ways to screw it up every week. Last week they didn't. Last week they played against Kentucky, who has a really good defense, won 24-10 in that game. So this is a team that is a few plays away from being like 6-2 on the season, honestly. But they have just found a way basically every single week to not make those plays. So it's not shocking, but I would have anticipated Vandy being less of an underdog. Like a 3-point underdog on the road would have been what I would have anticipated in this one.
Yeah, I would have as well, because I think Vandy's a very solid football team, and they don't make the mistakes that Auburn does. You know, they don't turn the ball over as much as them. I actually would, if it's at still under or a little higher than 7, if you can find it, I would take it. Like right now at the +8, I would take Vandy on the points right now to cover that spread.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Between Quinn Matthews, Tink Hintz, and Cooper Jerpy, who do you think will go on to have the best major league career? I would bet on Quinn Matthews out of those three.
I would too, especially because, I mean, in their minor league career, you've already seen both deal with injuries multiple years. Quinn Matthews would be the one I'd say for right now. Looks like the one that's going to have the long tenured career.
Yeah, I would say Quinn Matthews. He looks like he's got the better stuff than the other two guys. Jerpy doesn't really have the stuff. It's more of the deceptive delivery, kind of along the lines of Chris Sale, but of course Sale has the stuff to go with it. Tink Hintz, he may end up having a good career. I wonder if he's going to end up eventually moving to the bullpen. You know, he's still not building up innings at a very good rate for a starting pitcher, and now he's starting to deal with injuries. I just don't know if he's going to be a starter in the long run.
All right, from the 314, at what point do you believe it's acceptable to start hanging Christmas lights? Is it now. After Halloween?
Nope.
Oh, so
my family, my rule in my house is Christmas decorations, Christmas music, Christmas movies do not start until Black Friday.
I listened to Christmas music on the way in this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah, it is time.
Have some respect for the other holidays.
What other holiday? Thanksgiving? There's no music for Thanksgiving.
There's no music
decoration.
for Thanksgiving. There is decorations. It's the same as Halloween. Just get rid of all the scary stuff.
Look,
have some respect.
If I wasn't extremely busy this weekend, I would be putting up my Christmas stuff. So instead, I have to wait a week. But I'm in on the listening to the Christmas music now. It is time.
I think it depends. I think if you're not hosting Thanksgiving, you can put it up today. If you are hosting for Thanksgiving, I think you have to wait until the day after Thanksgiving. Black Friday is the day that you
I
can
won't
put it
be
up.
a poser.
So that would be the way that
I will be putting lights up this weekend, but they will not be going on until Black Friday. I take advantage of the nice weather.
You know, I hope my mom's listening right now because she'll be hosting Thanksgiving. I want to see a Christmas tree up when I get home for Thanksgiving.
Don't do it, Mrs. T. It's trash.
From the 314, guys, which producer on the station do you think will be the first to have their own show? I'm going to go ahead and
Jackson.
I think this is. I was going to say Marsh.
Okay, cool. I wanted to see what would happen on Tanner's face and nothing.
I'll take a moment to
Grant Francis.
Tires. I think it's T-Bone.
Grant Francis.
Now I think something that T-Bone should do is do a weekend show, but that's a different conversation.
Of course, Brandon wants me to work on.
Yeah, Brandon wants you to work extra days.
No, that is where I
just said I'm already busy this weekend.
That's why you said it.
I think T-Bone should do a weekend show during the baseball season. And I think he would do a really good job at it. That was where, Alex, I don't know about for you, but for me, I honed my craft, and people can still say that I'm terrible at it, totally fair. But when I did my own show, that was when I really started to figure out, okay, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at. How do I make sure that I hone in my strengths? And push down the weaknesses. I think that it requires you to do your own show before you can really.
Yeah, mine was a little on the weekend,
things,
but a lot of mine was from like 9 to midnight when I did sports open lines. Like,
the stuff where nobody's listening.
Yeah.
And if you screw up, it's not a big deal.
The good sports open line was from 6:15 to 9, and then from 9 to midnight, it was like, hey, let's let Alex get a couple of reps. But that's where I got my opportunities. But yeah, any opportunity that's not that prime stuff, that's where I just took advantage of it. I was the yes man though when I was at KOX. Sure. Like they said, hey, we got a At Your Service show on Saturday afternoon. You in? Be like, heck yes, let's go.
Sounds good.
Whatever you need.
I did the 6 to 7 a.m. slot once, like for a year. I did Saturday mornings from 8 to 10 was my other time slot that I did.
Yeah.
It was really highly sought after time slots was the start of BK's career. Let's put it that way. All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're talking to Brant Brown, the new Cardinals hitting coach. Want to talk to him about his philosophy on hitting, how coaching the hitters has changed over the last 7 years since he first got into the business in 2017. And did he have any prior relationships with people in St. Louis? How did this all come about? We'll talk to Brant Brown about that coming up in 15 minutes. But coming up next, Alex believes that he has the solution to the Blues' top-line issues. I'm genuinely curious to hear what he has to say about this. He'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
before the show today, I told Alex, I think the Blues have a top line problem, but I don't think there's any kind of a solution. The Blues last night when the top line was on the ice at 5-on-5. 1 shot for, 9 shots against. The Blues total shot attempts at 5-on-5. This includes shots on goal, shots that were blocked, etc. 5-4, 15 against when the top line was on the ice. Now, when that top line was not on the ice yesterday, 11 shots for, 6 against. When that top line was not on the ice, shot attempts in total were 38-19 in favor of the St. Louis Blues. So the Blues well outplayed the Flyers when their top line was not on the ice. That is not supposed to be the formula
what
for
happens
your
when
team.
you don't have a top line.
So I said, I think it's a problem. Clearly, I don't see any solutions because Robert Thomas is out for the foreseeable future, and I'm not really sure what you do. Alex then said, well, I've got a solution. Would you like me to tell you it now or when we get on the air? So I've not heard this yet because my answer was wait until we get back on the air. Alex, how do the Blues solve this problem?
First off, bleep off 636. It's not Martin Firk, okay? He's unavailable. He's in the AHL right now. The guy's Matthew Joseph. That's your answer. Now, some of this is he available? And Lou Korek just tweeted out he wasn't on the ice today. But he's day-to-day. My guess is you're probably going to take it easy, see what he looks like tomorrow. But the solution, once he is back, is Matthew Joseph. What have we been saying about Matthew Joseph all season? He is the dude that is driving plays for whoever he plays with. He's what Barbashev was for those few years when you were like, man, how is he doing this? Every single line, Barbashev was Mr. Fix-It. Matthew Joseph is that way. And if you look at that top line's issue right now, you just mentioned it. Not only are you not sustaining offensive zone time, but you're giving up the puck easily and you're chasing it in your own end. Well, Matthew Joseph has been on the ice with Braden Shen, with Dylan Holloway, with Zach Bolduc. Those lines have not only generated offense, but they have been so good defensively. And much like I believe with Robert Thomas, what makes him a better centerman is having guys that play north, retrieve pucks, and aren't just the transition style. I think what Pavel Buchnevich needs is 2 guys that he can just put the puck in north and say, please go get it while we get some offensive zone time. Texier's not that guy. We all like Texier. I think we all like Texier as a third-line player who can score goals temporarily, not playing 20-plus minutes a night. I think Neighbors plays well with Pavel Buchnevich. We've seen that. You need somebody else. My solution, I would love Matthew Joseph the moment he is healthy, which I'm hoping is tomorrow against Toronto. You put him on that left wing with Pavel Buchnevich, and you say, you 3 go to work when you're out on the ice.
Buch, Neighbors, and
Matthew Joseph. Because then you could keep everything the same, and I thought everything else was pretty good last night. I liked Holloway with Kyrou, and in that spot you would play, because it was
Saad, Holloway, Kyrou, Shin, Foxa, and then Bolduc or Texier.
So if you want to put Texier down in Bolduc's spot, or if you want to move Shen back to the center position on the third line, put Texier on the wing. But then that's the problem. Now you're talking about messing the fourth line up and taking Nathan Walker out. So I'm not doing that. So yeah, I would probably take Zach Bolduc out of the lineup and put Texier, or sit Texier and just leave the next 2 lines the own way.
What am I missing with Texier? Can somebody explain this to me like I'm 5? Because I think Texier has been fine. But I remember coming off of that first game, people were like, yo, you know who was really good? Alexander Texier.
He got hurt in that game.
Really? Oh, okay. I'll watch for it in the next game. And then we didn't see him for like a week and a half. And now since he's returned, I think he's been fine. I don't really notice him a lot.
I thought he was good in that Maple Leafs game. The Maple Leafs game was the only game that I saw where I was like, damn, okay, I see. But remember where they used him. He was like a second-line winger, and they were only using him 14, 15 minutes a night.
I just haven't seen it the way that others seem to have thus far. So, again, I'm open to the idea that I'm just flat out wrong and I'm missing something that is there and is obvious to people that understand it more than I do. But for me, I've struggled to see the hype. Meanwhile, like, I understand Zach Bolduc has also not been this otherworldly performer so far this year, and he has had some moments where it looks flat out bad. But I think Bolduc is a member of the future of this team. I don't know if that's going to be the case for Texier or not. So I wouldn't be the reason why I'm saying all of this, I'm not pulling Bolduc out of the lineup in favor of Texier. It's not something that I'm willing or interested in doing. So when Joseph does come back, for me, Texier would be the guy that becomes your 13th forward.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds strange considering they just put him on the top line, so I don't think that's what they will do, but that would be the way that I would approach it.
And I'm with you. I mean, Bolduc is a part of this future. The one thing with Bolduc is, and I think he's had a couple of good games where it feels like you've got some confidence building there, but he's just not as involved on the offensive side as I thought he was going to be. And I don't know if that's lack of confidence or where you're just insecure of like, hey, somebody's going to take my spot if I make a mistake. Part of me wonders if he's not in the right mindset. And the only people that know this is Bolduc and the coaching staff, where he is. But if he's not there, I would be fine with just sending him to the AHL and saying, look, man, we need you to go be a star. We need you to go be a stud. Just please go down there and dominate, because you need him to do that when you're at the NHL level. You can't be this foot in, foot out offensively. I mean, that last game, he didn't have a shot on goal against Philadelphia. Like, this is a guy that I watched Kyrou have 9 shot attempts. This is a guy who should be doing that as well. So I'm totally with you. Like, the NHL reps give it to him, but depending on where he is mindset-wise, I wouldn't be upset about just sending him to the AHL and just putting Texier in that third line spot.
So those are two guys that have kind of come into focus. For what it's worth, I think I would put Holloway up as my top line center right now. Just see what it looks like. That would be my solution, quote unquote, to this problem. I would have Holloway as my top line center. I would probably end up taking Booch and putting him on the wing, and I would go Holloway, Booch, and Neighbors as my top line for now.
Center depth then?
My second line center would be Foxa, and my third line center would be Shin. I know that's not great. I understand that. But it allows me to have guys that I trust in the spots that they're in. I think Holloway gives you right now the best minutes at center of anybody that I've seen so far on this team. And so it's not an ideal scenario, but you don't have an ideal scenario on that top line, and it at least gives me the most out of Pavel Buchnevich, and I find out what it looks like with him and Holloway and Neighbors up there. And then Foxa, I said at the beginning of the season, I think he's underqualified as a third-line center. As a second-line center, you're definitely asking a lot out of him, but again, it is what it is. I don't know really what more. Hell, I would even be willing to put up like Sonny as the third line center and Walker as my fourth line center and just see what it looks like.
We're all on the same page. I'll do anything to get Booch off of the center spot. I just know that they won't do it. So you got to get Booch going.
It's the only thing they've been stubborn about this year. Everything else they're willing to change up. Everything.
Well, that and playing Broberg as a top pair defenseman, because he still played the 4th most minutes of defenseman last night, and I thought he was your best defenseman in that game.
Again, but at least with that one, I get it,
and
because he's producing, and it's been really good chemistry between he and Falk. Hell, there have been games where they are literally playing as if they're your top pair. So that I am less concerned about. The Booch thing is the one that I just don't understand.
But because they're being stubborn about it, you've got to get him going. And right now, Mr. Fix-It on this team is Matthew Joseph, which is why I'll put Matthew Joseph up there.
But he's not in right now. Like,
no,
he's hurt, so that's where it gets even harder. Is with him out, I'm going with the thing that I know can potentially open up Booch for some more scoring, which is what you need out of him.
And the only reason I went with Joseph is because he is day-to-day. Now, if he doesn't play Saturday, then obviously this changes everything. Him not being on the ice right now tells you a little bit of a different story. When he returns, which my guess is he's going to be back on this homestand if he's day-to-day, that's the guy that I'm going to put up there with Booch. I just know that they're going to be stubborn about this no matter what and not take him off, which is frustrating.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Grant Francis back in the studio for us today as we are out at the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're talking a little bit more about the Cardinals. How do the Cardinals catch up with a team like the Dodgers, and how long is that going to take? We'll get into that coming up at 12:30, but next, we're happy to be joined by Brant Brown. He's the new Cardinals hitting coach. We want to talk to him about his philosophical belief in what hitting is in 2025, and how did this all come about? Does he have connections with the Cardinals organization? How did this connection come to be between Brant Brown and the Cardinals? We'll talk to him about all of that and so much more coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley, and we are happy to be joined via the Callier and Thompson hotline by Brant Brown. He's the Cardinals' new hitting coach. Previously had worked with Seattle, with Miami, Skip Schumacher down there, and, of course, the L.A. Dodgers. Spent a number of the years there as the assistant hitting coach. Now the newest member of the Cardinals staff is the Cardinals hitting coach. Brant, thanks so much for the time today, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you boys looking?
Doing really well. So let's start out kind of with just how this all came about. I would imagine that you and Skip have a good relationship. There's certainly the connection there with the Cardinals. But how did this all come to be, Brant? What is the connection between you and the Cardinals?
Well, I mean, you always kind of have admired the Cardinals organization for the standard that they set and the durability that they've had and consistency. But obviously I was in the market for a job this offseason, and you look around and you see teams that, are going to need a new hitting coach. So I unleashed my two big dogs. So I had Pujols and Schumacher call Ollie, and away we went.
Okay, so that's fascinating to me, because when you say you unleash your two dogs, what are those conversations like, Brant? First with Skip and Albert, and then once you had the conversation with Ollie.
Good connections to have.
Yeah, those are great dogs to throw out there.
Yeah, they're big ones. No, I just asked for favors with Albert and Skip. We have good rapport. Albert came over to L.A. After, his time with the Angels, and we did some things with him, and he learned a little bit, to something that, he wasn't used to or accustomed to learning, but he was able to evolve and enjoyed it, and then obviously finished up with St. Louis and setting some records, which was, everyone was happy to see. And then just the relationship with Skip and I, from just even working with 1 year together, and kind of what happened in Miami and the turnaround that we had, and we were able to pull a rabbit out of our hat and go to the tournament. So I think there's respect on both sides there. So, you were looking for two guys that carried weight, but you knew that we're going to have good opinions of you. And Ollie called, and we got on a little Zoom call, face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and we just talked. And to be honest with you, I think both of us ended up just thinking that it was just almost a discussion instead of an interview. So it was very comfortable. We talked about things that the team needed, the things that, I would like to implement, the things that, they thought needed to be implemented. And then from there, it went very quick. Talked to some staff members, talked to Mo, and then away we went.
Brant, from a hitting coach's perspective, when you're in the market for a new position and you're looking around at teams, do you look at rosters and say, yeah, this one matches the identity that I'm looking for? You can look at rosters. That's going to provide you with maybe,
a vision of, I guess you could say, talent, skill, youth, veteran, kind of like what they have. The big thing that I like to pay attention to when I'm going through this process is I like to listen to what each person I am talking to and what they are saying, because you can kind of get a clear picture of kind of what the need is over there. And then from that point, that's when I, see if it matches or not.
What did you get the sense of, Brant, when it comes to what the Cardinals need?
I thought that, obviously they need to score more runs. It's a very, very important concept in the game, because it's the only way you can win.
Cardinals fans nodding their head in approval. They would agree. Step one.
Yeah. And then, they have a lot of youth. They're going to go into a little bit of a different direction, which most teams are going into now, unless you have a $300 million payroll. And kind of the things that we were talking about, how to do it, because it's more important on how, not just identifying, but how we're going to do it, is they were definitely lined up in the way that, I feel like you can implement a system that allows for individuality within that system, but not just a bunch of individual systems, if that makes sense. Which then kind of gets a cohesiveness with, the character and the chemistry of the club, because it's the one thing that, you can't quantify chemistry, right? And it's important that everyone's pulling on the same side of the rope. and they were all in line with like what, we all thought we needed to do and how we needed to do it. And we've been talking about it ever since.
Brant, how do you approach handling young hitters at the major league level now that the game has changed so much and with the analytics?
Yeah, I mean, one is, you got to have conversations now. So I've been trying to get a hold of guys, a week ago, just having conversations. And just, first of all, I just listen, right? Like, listen to, what their opinions are, what they think about the team, what they think about themselves, and just have mild conversations. Like, you don't go bull rushing guys like right out of the gate. It's probably not a successful strategy, but like the more you can just listen and talk and earn like a relationship and trust organically, that seems to be a smoother path for me anyway. And then, they ask questions and you ask questions and you start getting to know each other. And then for me, like, we're going to take trips to see guys, because I think that also carries a lot of weight when you go to where they're at and see what they do in the off season when they're home. Whether you hit with them or not, it's not really the case. It's just more about trying to get to a point where in spring training we're going to hit the ground running.
Brant Brown is our guest here on 101 ESPN. He's the newest Cardinals hitting coach. Previously, it's been time with the Dodgers, the Mariners, and the Marlins. Good relationships with Albert Pujols and Skip Schumacher certainly don't hurt whenever you're coming over to the Cardinals organization. Brant, you said when you talked about Albert, he learned some new things when he came over to the Dodgers, and some of them maybe were a little different from what he had done in the past. Can you describe that a little bit? What do you mean by that? What kind of things were you able to discuss with Albert Pujols when he came over to the Dodgers that ended up unlocking what we ended up seeing, of course, here in St. Louis?
Yeah, so coming over from the Angels, and I understand it, right? It's like everyone was like, okay, this is, Albert Pujols, like just, let him do what he does and so on and so forth. But like we kind of took an opposite approach, and, we were just like, listen, like, you're just coming over here. Obviously we know you. We've talked to you a little bit before. But, like, we're just going to say stuff like you were just, some average Joe on the street, and then you tell us what you like and what you don't like. And then from there is, like, we tried to get him to understand that, kind of what he was used to doing and maybe some of the game planning stuff, we could maybe tweak that a little bit because of who he was now. And I mean by that is, his body and where it was. That's the first thing we kind of got into is we tried to explain to him, and he accepted it fully, is like he didn't need strength, he needed speed. So we started doing some things with some bands, some weighted balls, different styles of training. This is actually a funny story, and he will stamp this. Is like we were talking about, he's like, hey, do you think I should go to winter ball and maybe get some more at bats? I'm like, no, you need to lose 20 pounds. You need speed. He's like, oh, but like, Albert, like he is a worker and he did it, he lost the weight, he got faster. And like, that was important for him. And then on the game planning side is he was always like, hey, I'm just going to hit the ball the other way. And there were certain pitchers or pitch types where we were like, no, like, I want you to do this. And he's like, really? He's like, all right. And he would do it and he would be successful. And he's like, man, I've never tried to do that before. He thought it was wonderful that, he could do different things and add different clubs and different ways to game plan about pitchers that he'd never done before. And it was fun to watch.
Brant, so I guess that kind of goes into my next question then, because the approach of hitting has changed significantly from when you were a player and even from when you first got into hitting coach opportunities in like 2017. For you, as somebody that's been in that capacity over the last several years, what are some of the biggest differences that fans might not know about in terms of what the role of a hitting coach was a decade ago compared to what it is today?
Yeah, I mean, hitting is really tough. Pitching is advanced. It is high velocity. Their pitch shapes, they work on that, throughout. Spins, different tilts, the way they hold it, different grips. They throw ball to strike and strike to ball to both sides of the plate. They're trying to cause chaos. So for me, it's just kind of finding a balance and like taking all the layers that are involved in this and like breaking it down into like one simple conclusion. which is basically like, you are going to look in a spot, and what speed are you going to look in that spot for, and then where are you going to hit that speed to cover the mix? Now, it always doesn't work that way. There are other questions involved, such as, okay, where are your strengths versus his strengths, and, what does he do the best versus what do you do the best? So it's kind of a revolving door depending on the pitcher that night on, like, how you're going to make a plan to try to beat him. But at the end of the day, for me anyway, and it's something that I'm going to try to inject into this team, is that we're going to do it on our terms.
Brant, one thing that Cardinals fans seemingly have gotten frustrated with over these last couple of years has just been the development of the younger players when it gets to being acclimated to the major league level. From somebody who has been around the game as long as you have, how do you view the development of younger players on the hitting side?
I mean, I think you never stop developing. And the story about Albert, basically reiterates that. And then each guy is going to develop differently, right? It's like not so much about what you say, but like, what do they hear? And that's where the coaching styles, you've got to be kind of a chameleon. You've got to be able to relate to individual personalities and how they take data or what's going to make them the best and have the clearest version of their plan going out to win the game that night. So it's kind of like a coaching thing that, sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's not. And I think the one thing that, I've been telling the guys that I've been talking to is that, listen, like, we are all human. So at some point in time, we are going to get emotionally compromised, and like, that's okay. But we need to be honest and accountable with that and, understand that we're all doing it for one purpose and not let it be detrimental. Like, use it as more of a learning experience. And if we can do that, like, it'll make our value or increase our value more rather than like getting us into long, inconsistent lulls throughout the season because our emotions are bouncing up and down. Because being a hitter, it's more about dealing with failure than success.
Brant Brown is the newest Cardinals hitting coach. He's joining us here on BK and Ferrario for just another few minutes. We sincerely appreciate his time and what I know is a busy part of the offseason for the Cardinals and certainly all of the coaches. Brant, I think that a hitting coach might be the most thankless job in all of sports because when the guys are hitting, it's on the player. And when the guys aren't hitting, it's on you. And so that comes with a lot of pressure. It comes with very little appreciation for some of the job. And honestly, a lot of people on the outside, this includes myself, it includes all of us, don't totally understand sometimes what the role is as a hitting coach. So here's a question for you about what it was for you last year. How does your role in St. Louis, or at least your expected role in St. Louis, differ from what you had last year in Seattle when, if I'm understanding it correctly, you were the offensive coordinator and bench coach there? So how do those roles differ in your mind?
I think this year, I'm going to have more of a bigger say in kind of, the system that we're going to run, which, I personally like. But as far as the coaching aspect is, we all know what we sign up for. That's 100% true. And Freddie Freeman would say it the best. Like, if he had a bad night, he'd be like, you're a bad hitting coach. And we're like, yes, we are a bad hitting coach. But like at the end of the day, remember those old Vidal Sassoon commercials? I might be aging myself here, where it's like, if you don't look good, we don't look good. Like, that's basically how it goes. And we know that. So, it's our job to, and no hitting coach is trying to not do that. That's the thing, right? But it's our job to relate to the players, implement a system from top to bottom that can be executed and ran each and every night, because you are playing a little bit of a marathon. But at the end of the day, if you can create a system that guys are attached to, they're convicted to, and they're all in on, is like that process. And trust me, boys, like, even a good process has bad things that happen in it, but it helps you like keep out the chaos and the noise, right? Like, it kind of keeps you in the hallway of what's happening right now, what's going on tonight, because our game is really, really tough with our schedule and our prep time that we have. We don't have an extra day of practice or 6 days of practice. Like, we go every single night. So, like, our practice time is very minimal. And how do we take, like, advantage of that and get ready to win the game one day at a time?
Brant, final question for you, and thanks again for the time today. Other than just runs per game, which is obviously the number one thing that an offense is going to be judged on, for you, what do you think you would use to evaluate what makes the best offense in Major League Baseball? Like, if you were looking at a metric or any one thing, what would it be that you would be looking at to see, okay, that's the team that has the best offense beyond just the runs per game? Because that's the end result. This is more, I'm asking kind of process-wise, what would be that thing for you?
I mean, that is a really tough question because, if you look at, the productive offenses throughout the league, they're all kind of shaped a little bit differently. So I think the one thing is, like, it may not be a statistic. It might be just like tapering the offensive identity to the skill set and the strength of the club. For example, like Dodgers, they see a ton of pitches, right? Like, they will grind you out. They also slug. They strike out a little bit, but they walk a lot. 2 years ago when Atlanta was just like, you watch them hit, it's like everything they touched was a homer, but they also led the league in hits, right? So, you have these different offenses that do different things. So I think the best way to get the best version of an offense is to use the skill set that is there. And if they all operate like to the best of their own ability and like not outside of themselves, I think you can extract like the most out of each player. And that's what it takes, right? Like 1 through 9, because you need every guy in that order using their superpower that night, because we don't know what run that we score is going to win the game.
Hey, Brant, this has been great, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. I feel like we learned a little bit, both about you as an individual and also about what the Cardinals are going to be emphasizing this year with their hitting approach. Hopefully we can do this many times over the coming weeks, months, and years. We'll talk with you again soon, my man. Enjoy your offseason.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Anytime, gentlemen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brant. As Brant Brown, Cardinals' new hitting coach, joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Previously, of course, with the Dodgers, with the Marlins, and then with the Mariners briefly last year. I think full disclosure, I think he got a raw deal in Seattle. He had a weird role, and then the offense didn't produce early on. There was a ton of pressure on that team, as you would expect, and then they didn't hit. That happens. We certainly saw that last year here in St. Louis as well. The Mariners made the move that Cardinals fans wanted the Cardinals to make, and then nothing really changed. The offense didn't get better after he was fired, just like I'm not sure that the offense would have been better last year for the Cardinals if they had fired their hitting coach. I will say this. I like the guy.
I do too.
I don't know if it's going to work. I have no idea if it will work here in St. Louis. But when he was hired, Mo said during the press conference, hey, we think that this is a good combination. It's a midpoint of what the Cardinals had with Jeff Albert and what they've had over the last couple of years under Turner Ward. It's a former player that does appreciate and understand some of the analytical side of things, but also he's going to kind of meet people where they are. I don't know if it works. But all the questions that we had for him, he answered in a way that I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. He seems like a great communicator, and from what I'm understanding, after how many hitting coaches we've talked to or former hitting coaches, it really comes down to being able to communicate and get your point across to a hitting staff. And I think that's what seemingly wasn't working for the Cardinals this past season, and just talking to him for, 15 minutes, this dude sounds like he knows how to communicate to all different. If you can tell Albert Pujols that he's too heavy and you need to lose some weight, you can communicate to anybody.
I liked what he said, and this is something that I should probably take to heart. It's not what you say, it's how they hear it. That, to me, is the most...
That's a bumper sticker that you need to put on your damn forehead.
To me, that's the most important thing you can learn as any kind of a coach or communicator in any walk of life, right? If you're a teacher, if you're a coach, if you're a radio host, it's not so much what you say. It's, hey, how do people internalize what it is that you just said? And I think there were times in the past where the Cardinals hitting coach would say something, and then for whatever reason, the message just didn't come across. Hell, we can talk about this with Craig Berube. Craig Berube is an excellent hockey coach. It wasn't working anymore here. And that doesn't mean that we have to be happy that he got fired, but it was time to make a change and go to something different. I think that things had gotten stale with the Cardinals' hitting philosophy here in St. Louis. Now you go to Brant Brown. I don't know if this is going to work 3 years from now. I don't know if it's going to work next year. But I like that they're trying stuff, and we'll see if it ends up coming together next season. All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. If you missed any of our conversation with the Cardinals' new hitting coach, Brant Brown, check it out on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com, or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Coming up next, we continue our Cardinals conversation by talking about how they can catch a team like the Dodgers, or if they can catch a team like the Dodgers. We'll do that next here on BK and Ferrario.
Grant Francis here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, the Blues carried much of the play in Philadelphia, but they couldn't really get the offense going as they fell 2-1 to the Flyers. After they went down in the first period, they battled back in the third as Nathan Walker picked up his first goal of the season to tie it, but then a costly turnover with 3 minutes left in the game by Jordan Kyrou resulted in a Bobby Brink game-winning goal for the Flyers as the Blues fall to 5-6 on the season now. They'll look to get back to 500 tomorrow night as they welcome in Craig Berube and the Maple Leafs. It'll be a 5 o'clock pregame and a 6 o'clock puck drop right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. And then on Sunday, you'll have an NFL football Sunday here on 101 ESPN. We'll kick it off with Bills and Dolphins at pregame starting at 11. Then Cardinals and Bears at 3:05. And following that, Sunday night football between the Vikings and Colts at 7:20. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
And Tanner's going to be mad about it. We're not going to talk about the Cardinals here. We're going to talk about the Blues instead.
Suck it, T-Bone.
Whoa.
Sorry, buddy. That was aggressive.
No, I'm upset about the audible.
The Blues have some new line combinations, and they have completely jumbled up the power play mix.
Freaking banished.
Let's go.
So it's time to talk about this. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Grant Francis back in the studio for us. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show, and YouTube is available for you. The YouTube stream is at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. That's where the chat is off and running today as well. All right, so the practice lines today. Your top line as of this morning was Holloway, Shin, and Kyrou. Your second line, Saad, Booch, and Neighbors, which looks a lot like your top line, but now it's your second line.
I think you got 2 second lines.
Your third line, Torpo, Foxa, and Bolduc. And your fourth line as of today, they did do something that we suggested, Alex, which is put Texier on that fourth line. They have him there with Sonny and Walker. So those are your 4 lines. Let's start out by talking about that, Alex. What do you think of the new line combinations?
I like it. Me personally, after the game of your top line to where, you just got outplayed by Philadelphia, top line versus top line, you had to move Texier down. You had to move Texier down to a third or fourth line role. And frankly, I wouldn't have really shifted Bolduc down to a fourth line spot. So Texier made the most sense.
Great.
Right now, it's a little bit of, hey, you got to go out there and prove it as a fourth liner before you can get to the top 6, top 9. We don't agree with it, but they did that to Jake Neighbors. So I like that decision. I think a lot of people are going to focus in on how the line combinations are set up to where Shen is the number 1 center. I was joking there. But there was also like
Caught your eye?
There was also like 15% seriousness. I don't think they have a number 1 line. I think they got number 2 lines, and that's how they're going to have to adjust this moving forward. Like you've got 2 lines that you could throw out there an even amount of time in games, and it's really going to come down to matchups.
And I don't trust either of the centers.
I don't trust any center right now not named Fox or Sundqvist. Like, you could put Holloway there. I don't trust Holloway.
Why not, though?
I just don't trust him in the defensive role. There is so much responsibility that goes into playing the centerman in terms of being the first man back, breaking up plays, just as much as it is driving offense. If you were to give me those 3 players, I would trust Shen the most because he's done it the longest.
I would trust him the least.
That's, different
year.
opinion. That's fine, but I trust him because he's done it the longest compared to the other 2. But right now, you need goals, and if you're not taking Buchnevich off of the center position, guys, Dylan Holloway is tied for the team lead in goals. So you got to move him to the wing so that somebody is scoring goals. Do you like Shen at the center position? Probably not, because he does not look like the player that he has been in the past. But I need offense right now. And right now, Dylan Holloway is going to, just like we're complaining about Booch not bringing offense at the center position, you're going to be doing the same thing as Dylan Holloway's playing the center spot, and somebody is going to have to start scoring goals. They're not going to move Booch off of the wing or off the center spot, so you take Holloway off of it and you just hope something clicks.
Yeah, I feel like Holloway has produced at times as a center. I think it's an interesting spot, man. You look at what Holloway has done, and I don't know, Alex, if you have your book here or not to know if he played center in these games. But
Holloway?
Yeah, he scored a goal in the game against Carolina, scored 2 goals in the game against Toronto, scored a goal against Ottawa.
Dandy notebook.
I don't recall in the back of my mind if he was playing center in those games or not. Carolina, I think he was not.
He was the wing with Shen.
He scored 2 goals against Toronto.
He was the centerman with Joseph and Kapanen, but the 1 goal was on the power play and the other was the empty net.
Okay.
And then what was the other
Ottawa was the last one.
He was the center with Bolduc and Kapanen, but I think that was a power play goal.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So he's been a wing, essentially, on the goals that he's scored.
Why can't this team figure out offense from its centers?
Because
why is it? I understand that there's a lot more that goes on the plate of the center. But, Alex, I've seen centers for the Blues score in the past. So why is it so hard for their centers this season to figure that out?
Because there is so much responsibility on the centerman that as a wing, I mean, Shen talks about this all the time. It's so much easier for a centerman to go to the wing than it is the wing to center. Because as a center to a wing.
But these are guys that have played center. Holloway has not played center in the NHL level, but he's also barely played at the NHL level. He was playing center in the
But you got to understand, man, the AHL is different than the NHL in terms of how teams perform.
Totally.
And Booch, I mean, Booch hasn't done it since the KHL.
Now, that I get.
Yeah.
That one I'm not talking about. But I'm like Shin. I guess he just can't score. But Holloway.
I just think Shen.
So here's
he's really struggling.
I've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with Ryan O'Reilly in the past, asking him like, what goes into the responsibilities of the centerman? And the way that Ryan O'Reilly explained it to me is just as much as you're in the offensive zone, because as a centerman, when you get into the offensive zone, luckily you have the worker bees that go out and do it all for the queen bee. They're the ones that go after the puck, and you're the one that tries to generate offense. But as a centerman in the offensive zone, not only are you focusing on what the wingers are doing and finding the open space on the ice so that you can create and generate offense, you have to be focusing in on what the players on the ice on the other side are doing, because the moment that one guy jumps and tries to go off to the races, you've got to get back. So you're focusing on what your defensemen are doing and making sure that if there's one pinching in, you cover for that defenseman. You're focusing on what your forwards are doing to see if they retrieve the pucks, do I need to go give them support? Do I go to the front of the net? And then as soon as the puck is turned over, it's crap. I got to get back and kill this play first, because your wingers are the ones in on the forecheck. So why the offense isn't working? Because the natural centermen, they've been doing that since juniors hockey. They've been doing that since peewee hockey.
But that's Holloway.
That's Shen.
But that is Shen. But, I mean, Shen's play hasn't been there. But he at least understands where it's at right now. I think with Holloway, the AHL is just different. The AHL, just like juniors hockey, it's a lot of pond hockey to where you can get out there and you could create offenses off of the rush. There's more turnovers. There's more mistakes. At the NHL, other teams aren't making mistakes. So if you're Holloway, and not only are you Holloway playing a spot that you haven't played since the AHL, but you're also on a new team, and you're also on a team that right now is struggling a little bit. You're not going to try and make a little offense. You're not going to take a sacrifice on the defensive side to go on offense because you don't want to make the mistake. It's your responsibility to get back. If you're Pavel Buchnevich, there's probably a lot of pressure on you right now, because not only did you sign a contract extension, but there's a .600 winning percentage behind your name as a centerman, and you're not generating offense. So I don't like the Booch at center spot, because Booch is a natural winger who can score 35 goals for you, but you're stuck. Would you rather have Holloway doing it, who did do it in the AHL, but also hasn't even played 100 games in the NHL? Or would you rather have Buchnevich do it, who at least has done it in the NHL over the last couple of years?
Your new top line, Holloway, Kyrou, Shin. How much time do you think they've played together so far this year? That trio.
Say that again?
Holloway, Kyrou, and Shin. That trio of players. How long do you think they have been on the ice together so far this year? Don't go through your book.
Handy dandy notebook.
I've got it in front of me. Well, how long do you think they have played together?
Little Tony, remember what Brant Brown just told us?
Yeah, seriously.
Sorry.
It's not about what you say. It's about how you say it.
How people hear it.
Well, I heard it, and it was a Tony
You're right. I apologize.
You should have heard it too, by the way.
Yeah, you should have heard it before it came out of your lips, or even up out of your Adam's apple. I'll say 15 minutes.
Sure, I'll go with that as well.
1 minute.
I feel like they haven't played together.
And Bannister saw it and was like, "Whoa, you guys aren't supposed to be out there together."
I'm not saying that to suggest that it's like a bad combination or anything. It's just a reminder that they are just searching for answers right now. They're searching for anything that will work. And so I may have one idea of what it should look like. I would not have Shin on my top line. Forget center, wing, I just wouldn't have Shin on the top line right now because I don't think he's performed up to that standard. And again, this is not me talking trash about Braden Shin. I think Shin is an awesome dude, and I think he's been an outstanding player for most of his time here in St. Louis. It just hasn't worked so far for him this season, and I hope it does at some point. It ain't there yet. I would have Holloway as my top line center right now. I would take Buchnevich off of the center position, and those would be the starting points of how I would put together my line construction right now. They're obviously unwilling to do that. The one thing, Alex, you mentioned this in the last segment, that they have been unwilling to do is move Buch from center. He is every night playing the center position, and then we work things out from there. All right, power play units. These have been mixed up significantly as well. Alex Broberg is now the point on the top power play unit. And then you've got Buch and Falk as your flankers, Kyrou at the bumper position, and your net front presence as neighbors. How do you feel about that top group?
I really like that decision. And I think it's probably going to be an unpopular opinion because you're using two defensemen, but you don't have a one-time threat. And Justin Falk, for all of his faults, Justin Falk has one heck of a shot. It might not be working from the blue line. Put him at the top of the face-off dot and let him tee off.
You ready for the second pair, or second grouping on the power play unit?
Let's hear it.
This will be something.
Point is Colton Parayko.
Oh, yes!
Curbs is happy.
Tee him high and let him fly.
Holloway and Bolduc are your flankers.
Okay.
Shin is the bumper. Sod is your net front presence.
I don't mind that one. I mean, where does Sod scores 25 goals every single season? And honestly, Holloway showed the one-timer against Ottawa on that power play, and Bolduc has the one-timer on the power play, and you need somebody to win the faceoff there. So what I find most interesting on that number one unit was Kyrou was taking the faceoffs. They have Kyrou taking. Now, I know he was the bumper there, but
they do.
Well, I mean, Kyrou, if he was in the middle spot as the bumper, are you making him take the face-off, or is Buch taking the face-off?
Yeah, I'm assuming Buch is taking the face-off, and then Kyrou
I don't know. Kyrou's taken a couple of face-offs on the power play so far this season. So maybe you have him do that since he's the bumper spot.
Can we play him at center now?
30%, so.
Well, he did play center in juniors.
Yeah, he's still listed as a center on every website.
If we're going to go off of everyone being centers in juniors, might as well try it, right?
So that is what they're
Why
going
not?
with today. They have jumbled things up, and honestly, good. It was time. It's time to jumble things. Even if I disagree with the way they've gone about it, I'm just happy that they're changing things. I don't know if it'll work. I would bet against it. But
Hitch told you guys, if it doesn't look good, you got to change it pretty quickly.
And he's
Don't
been
stick
doing that.
with it. Yeah, he has.
Coming up in 10 minutes, the Cardinals are committing to pushing again after this brief retool. Are you buying what they're selling, though? We'll talk about that at 1 o'clock. Coming up next, Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, you had something that you'd like to throw in here for us today?
Yeah, so, Halloween was yesterday, and that means there's always Halloween parades going on. Well, imagine showing up for a Halloween parade. You're all excited. Bring baby Luca, bring the 3 girls with you, Alex, for this Halloween parade. And you show up, you get there, get a great spot, by the way. Great spot. And nothing comes.
Like the parade doesn't show up, or you pick the spot where the parade doesn't go?
No, the parade doesn't show up. I just saw this on Twitter. An AI-generated website originated from Pakistan made up a fake Halloween parade in Ireland. Hundreds of people showed up, only for nothing to happen. Brutal.
First, the first thing that would not have happened in this scenario, me getting there on time to pick a great spot with my 3 kids.
Yeah, no chance of that. Yeah, that's one of the many fears. This is like the smallest fear of AI. I've got plenty more, but that's for the other podcast that we'll do on artificial intelligence down the road.
We're doing another podcast?
We've got a lot of podcasts that are set up for this.
Dad pod. Work more on weekends. I'm not going to have this time.
Dad pod coming your way soon.
We've got a politics podcast, a theology podcast.
No, we don't have either of those two.
We've got a lot of podcasts.
You have those podcasts.
I'm not a deep thinker.
I also had a question about Halloween for you guys. Are we going to have trick-or-treating in 20 years? Because, Alex, I remember when we were growing up, and this is not a back-in-my-day thing. It's not a I miss the days as they used to be. It's a I don't know if that is going to exist any longer kind of a question. Because I remember when we were growing up, man, like I would go into my neighborhood, and every house light was on, and they either had the candy already set on the doorstep, or there would be somebody there to hand it out to the kids. And there were kids from all over the neighborhood that were running around, having a great time, whatever. You have kids that are in their wagons. Everybody's walking through the neighborhood simultaneously, right? Last night, we walked through the neighborhood, and it was better than it has been in recent seasons because the weather was much better than it has been in recent years. But I'd say there was probably like 50 people that were walking around the neighborhood total. I don't know if 20 years from now, trick-or-treating as we know it will continue. I think it will be more of the, like, trunk-or-treats or...
That's it.
Like in St. Charles, we've got the Main Street thing where it's during the day and you can go around. They've got something set up for kids where you can walk down the street and get all your candy and then you go home afterwards. I think that's going to be more the direction that everything is heading. I'm not sure that trick-or-treating as we know it will exist 20 years from now.
I'm 100% with you, and mine wasn't so much the people walking around. It was the houses that were willing to be a part of the trick-or-treating. Like every house that we went to, it was probably every 4th house would have their light on. I mean, we had to walk all the way down to our subdivision to find houses with their lights on, and some of them would be out, some of them would be sitting around, and this one was at least decent weather compared to what last year was. I think you nailed it in the trunk or treat. I think trunk or treat and trick or treating either on the weekend, because when was the last time Halloween was on a Friday or a Saturday? Like, it feels like it's been a while. And I don't, maybe the
next year will be, right?
Yeah, because I'm assuming Halloween every year it's a different date. So
it moves over by.
So we're talking like what?
It would have been
5-6 years ago.
I can confirm that will happen.
But here's the thing:
next year it'll be on a Friday.
I didn't trick or treat 5 or 6 years ago because I didn't have kids then. So like, once you see a Friday or Saturday, the thing with trunk or treats are they're always on the weekends, and those parades that you talked about, they're in the daytime or
when they're real.
Earlier.
Yeah, most of them are.
What?
Not this one.
when they exist, when they're real.
Now when they're AI generated.
But I don't know if people are willing to do trick-or-treating anymore because there's so many trunk-or-treats leading up to actual Halloween. Because by then, families, at least me, I'm like, okay, my kids have had like 5 different trunk or treats. We're good on candy. We don't need to go out.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, I had 250 or 300 kids over the course of a couple of nights. It's not the kids, it's the houses that are not participating. I could see some of that as well. I think it's
neighborhood.
It's a bit of both, and it becomes a chicken or the egg, right? If you have a neighborhood where people aren't participating, like houses are not participating, then you get fewer kids, and then they start leaving your neighborhood and going to others where they know they will be participating. Like by us, Newtown is an area that a lot of people will go to because they know there's going to be candy on the
My sister's in Millstadt, and she said last night that they went out, and they were out for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. She said every house had people sitting at the end of their driveway with fire pits that were handing out candy. So I think it really comes down to the subdivisions you're in that participate. But again, like,
I think that's a good point. I think it's now become a destination spot.
You got to be
where
the
like
right spot.
Candy Cane Lane, you're going down to this specific area for the decorations for whether it's Christmas or Halloween, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's almost become that way with trick or treating as well, where there are specific designated neighborhoods within each area of, hey, you go here for trick or treating. Whereas it used to be you just stay in your neighborhood.
Yep.
You do whatever.
Yep.
Wherever you're at, there's gonna be trick or treating available for you. So it's definitely changed. And I'm not yearning for yesteryear. I think the trunk or treating is fine. I think going down we have Main Street by us. Totally fine experience. It's just different. It's just a totally different thing. And I think 20 years from now, I would bet on no. I don't know that we have trick-or-treating as we currently know it. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, the Cardinals are committing to pushing again after this brief retool. Are you buying that, though? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Grant, we've got a piece of audio in the folder for today from Bill DeWitt III. He joined us yesterday here on the show. We talked to him about a number of different things, and if you guys missed the conversation, I do think it's worth your time. He came on specifically because the Cardinals wanted to talk about Amendment number 2, the sports betting proposition that's going to be on the ballot next week. But we were able to talk to him about the Cardinals' plans with their TV rights deals and a little bit about their budget and why they decided to decline the options on Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Keenan Middleton, news that had been announced just before our interview with Bill DeWitt III yesterday. And when we were talking about that, Alex, he said something that I found to be interesting, and it was just kind of an offhand comment. It's something that T-Bone, I know, has been talking to us about off of the air. But, hey, is this something where the Cardinals are going to have this this return to previous payrolls, where they're slashing payroll this offseason, and then they just stay there? Because we've seen some teams do that, where they don't ever get back up to where they were previously. Or are the Cardinals planning to take a step back and then eventually pushing forward again when it comes to their payroll? Here's Bill DeWitt III kind of talking about that in an offhand way yesterday with us.
As we said in the press conference, and Mo and Chaim Bloom, who will take over after Mo after next year, we're really focused on the player development process. The good news is we have a lot of really good young players and more coming. So we need to know what these guys can do so that when we do get this turned around and moving in the right direction, we can add pieces as needed to really, get us back to where we want to be.
Alex, that sounds to me like this is a situation where they're going to step back and then push forward, right? How did you hear that when you heard that comment yesterday?
I heard it that way, which was somewhat surprising to me, too, because the way that he framed that was, we're taking a step backwards to focus on the development, i.e. you're trying to make sure you can develop all of the right players to get cost-controlled players, and then when the time is right, you get that payroll back up to where it has been, and you go out there and you get those final pieces that can help a team compete. So all of that makes sense. I think my question more so is like, this is great, but are you actually going to do it? Which we're not going to have the answer to that until they get the minor league development side of thing. Like they could struggle on that and say, well, it's not time for us to do that because our minor leagues aren't developing.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear him kind of say that, because it does sound like a guy, potential future owner of the Cardinals, of someone that is willing to push the team back when they are ready to contend again. And the reason that I actually kind of believe him is he made reference multiple times when we talked with him yesterday of, this isn't just a step back because of the TV deal. That's the main reason of it. We all know that. He didn't really say that. But he also kept saying we're getting hit with the double whammy of our performance isn't there, fans are aren't disappearing, but aren't coming to the games, and we're also getting hit with the RSN situation. Well, that sounds like someone that knows that they need to have the formula of, hey, we've got to have a winning ball club to bring fans in, which also helps boost our payroll. I think the Cardinals just knew they got to the logical point of, there's nothing else to really do with this roster outside of blocking young guys, and we don't really want to do that because we believe in what we have in a Jordan Walker, a Nolan Gorman, a Brendan Donovan, a Newt Barr, a Scott, all those guys that you could just name off, Herrera as well. And I think they also looked at it and said, there is no better time to go through a reset than we're at the end of the Mo era. And that's not to say like Mo's not good at his job. It's hey, we're getting fresh eyes. We get a new guy in here in Chaim Bloom that's going to take things over. Let's let him do what he wants to do. We'll get our payroll back up, maybe not to the exact number that it was at, but close enough when we're ready to push again. Let's let Chaim Bloom get his hands on it. Let's have Chaim Bloom, and I think this is the best thing to do for an organization when you have a new Pobo or a new GM in any sport. That's why I love what Army's doing when Steen takes over in 2 years. He basically gets the books to start fresh for him. He's still going to have some of the guys here that'll be under ARB deals and stuff, but you can kind of project those out. He's going to get almost like a fresh reset to kind of do what he wants.
He said it 4 times. Now I know why they're calling it a refresh. Because of this. Making everything fresh.
The Cardinals' current players that have a guaranteed contract on the books for 2026. So this is 2 years from now. Nolan Arenado, $27 million. Sonny Gray, $35 million. Wilson Contreras, $18 million. End of list. It's entirely possible none of those players are on the roster by then. Entirely possible. That is why I think that the Cardinals, I do, famous last words, trust that they will push. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know that their payroll will ever get back to $200 million again, or probably at some point due to inflation of the sport. But I think you're going to see a lot of teams start to show some retractions. I think it's the gap between the haves and the have-nots, which is going to be a lot more teams in the have-nots now than the haves. I think it's going to be as wide as it's ever been in Major League Baseball because of these RSN deals. Dude, it changes everything about the landscape for Major League Baseball. There was a report the other day. The Texas Rangers are expected to try to slash payroll again this offseason. Not just stay where they were, stagnate. They are expected to slash payroll this offseason. There's like 5 teams in Major League Baseball that can really spend anymore. This RSN deal is even bigger than I think people are making it out to be, and people are making it out to be a pretty significant situation. So the Cardinals went from having $70 million guaranteed every year to maybe 50 next year, and then beyond that, could be 40. We don't know. It could be basically half of the guaranteed money that they previously were anticipating. So I don't blame them for taking a step back. And beyond that, just from a baseball perspective, I think at a certain point in time in business or in life, you have to recognize when what you're doing, you can't piece it together anymore. Like you're just getting diminishing returns every time you try to throw more at it. Because the Cardinals tried this year to piece things together in a way that they could, and it didn't work. So now it's about, okay, what can we do to actually get this thing back to championship contention? And what does that look like? And the truth is they got to start new. They got to start fresh. And get the guys in here that can push you forward. That's going to require a lot of these young guys taking significant steps forward. I don't know if they're capable of it or not, but let's find out. Over the next couple of years, that's got to be the game plan. And then beyond that, who's your next version of Sonny Gray? Go sign him. Who's your next version of Wilson Contreras? Go sign that guy. Who's your next version of Paul Goldschmidt? Hopefully in his prime still, 26, 27, 28 years old. Go trade for that dude. If you can do those things, you're going to be in a good spot, but it's going to require a couple of years of patience, and that is not the easiest thing to do, certainly, in this market with the baseball team. Coming up next, Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. He'll do that next here on 101 ESPN.
wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You have BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and we are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. That banging that you just heard, though, not coming from us. We are in a beautiful studio. Mike McKenna's a former NHL goalie. He's now doing his best work with McAdoodles, which is going to be opening 2 weeks from today. That is why
that's right.
Behind him. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. I told you I was going to be coming live from a construction site today, and this is the ambiance of it. So, you know what? They're putting together some shelving in the background. We're rocking, but a little bit different scene here than it was last night watching the Blues game with a fire pit in front of me outside for Halloween as all the kids came by trick-or-treating.
I was going to say ambient noise. Everyone's just hearing a hammer go into those metal shelves right now. Just wham!
Yeah, it's this place is a live site, man. I tell you what, Brian and Feisey Road out here in Dardian Prairie, we're ready for everybody.
Look at that, love it. So, Mike, let's talk about that Blues team last night because I think a lot of people see the score, a 2-1 loss. You see a 1-3 road trip, and you look at it and you say, what a terrible outcome for St. Louis. And the 1-3 absolutely is. But when you piece by piece this road trip, what's your biggest takeaway for the Blues?
Injuries and inexperience have hurt a little bit, but I think they've done things that are also worth looking at and thinking there's potential here to be better. You know, last night was a very winnable game in Philadelphia. If they get any shots through the net, if they get more to the inside, if there's not one or two bad turnovers, but I'm compounding here, right? Like there's a lot of things I've just said that led to them not winning. And then you take the game in Ottawa and just go, oh, man, like, that one really stings. They'll get run out of the building. So I think it's kind of what we thought might happen with this team from the start. And, yeah, we've seen 3 and 6 of late, but there were still glimmers at the start of the season that gave a lot more hope to what this team can be. But, guys, we're really seeing without Robert Thomas in the lineup what the team looks like. We're seeing the power play struggle with it. We're seeing special teams not be where they are. We're still seeing the goalies bail the team out more than they should. So there's growth, and until Bannister finds the right lineup, I mean, we might see a whole lot more of this, but just hopefully eking out some more of these wins like last night in an attainable game.
Mike, who is currently the best center on the active roster in your opinion?
Oh, it's tough, dude. I honestly don't know the answer to that right now. I mean, Buchnevich has been a good experiment there. I think at times Dylan Holloway even looks really good there, guys. So I wish I had a clear-cut answer because, again, without Thomas in the lineup, where are we looking right now? Oscar Sundqvist looked great. How much is he going to do at center, too? So I don't have the right answer to it, guys. Do you? Because
I said Holloway.
That's what everybody's asking.
Today, I would go Dylan Holloway as the top line center. They decided to go with Braden Shin at Marine Skate today. He's the one that ended up getting the top line opportunity. But I think there's different answers you could give here.
I mean, Dylan Holloway, if we see him keep going between his legs and putting the puck under the bar and that creativity, dude, like that's the ceiling to Dylan Holloway. Right, like this is an early draft pick. This is a player that Edmonton liked, that they would have liked to have been able to keep in-house, that they weren't able to for all the reasons why Doug Armstrong went out and got Dylan Holloway. So you see flashes of it on both sides of the puck. He's still growing into his game. Is he a top-flight first-line center in the NHL? I don't know about that yet. It's not there, but it could be. That is the ceiling. It could be. Where's he going to slide in? Is it more towards a second line, third line, probably? But I think for me, Shen is probably best served on the wing. It's just out of necessity right now. He's going to be going down the middle.
Mike, I know obviously you're not a coach for the Blues, but you've lost the offense that Pavel Buchnevich provides, and defensively you're not really seeing the same type of player at the center position. I know you're in a necessity mode right now without Robert Thomas, but, man, it seems that you can't continue this because you're lacking so much offense without Buch at the wing.
Well, I agree with you, and that's where he's best served because it's tough. You guys, it's tough to learn on the job with anything, okay? And I mean, even in what I'm doing now, trying to be the manager of a liquor store, which whoever thought that was going to be what I do in life. I'm learning on the job. You know what I did? I made sure that our company also had people who could support, that could do this. And when Robert Thomas is in the lineup for the Blues, there's support there because there's enough down the middle with Sundqvist, Foxa, Holloway, Thomas. You could factor in Buchnevich, Schenn if you wanted to. I just think right now you're really light with it. And, unless Bolduc suddenly is going to be able to take some minutes at center away from somebody, or if Schenn goes back, it's thin. So I still think you can't really learn on the job. I do think Buchnevich is best as a winger in the NHL. But if they're going to stick with this experiment, it almost has to go for a full season before you're really going to know what you have from 89 down the middle.
We're talking about Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. Follow him on Twitter, 56. Mike, there is one player that's come under scrutiny once again because this is how it goes.
No, don't do it.
Kyrou.
Oh, you did it. You did.
Yeah. So Kyrou scored 2 goals in the opener and has not scored again since. The good is Jordan Kyrou has 9 points in 11 games. He's at a near point per game basis right now. And he is still a positive, a net positive on the season in terms of his plus minus. And if you look at his all-around game, I think for the most part he's been pretty good in that area. However, he's paid to score goals. And last night he had a bad moment with a turnover, 3 minutes to go. You just got to put that puck deep and live to fight another day, get the point in regulation. What have you seen, Mike, from Jordan Kyrou so far this season? How would you evaluate his game?
Well, I was sitting at Halloween last night. I had the fire pit going. I had the TV in the background. And my next door neighbor, Ronnie, sitting next to me. Shout out to Ronnie, who was a Merrimack Shark All-Star as a kid, and I was a Kirkwood Star. So I just, we have a fractured relationship that's mending right now because it's a natural rivalry. But I tell you what, Ronnie goes, man, I really like Kyrou this year. I think he's been more responsible defensively, and I went, yeah, exactly. Guys, I'm really not concerned about the goal production from one player. It's the overall goal production from the team. You're not going to win games 1-0. As Kyrou's putting up points, it's good. He's getting the assists he needs to. He does need to factor in the scoring. I think it'll come. He hit the post, twice last night, guys?
Yeah.
I think the team hit the post 4 times last night. So he's tended to score in bunches previously. I'm not as concerned with it. I am really happy with him defensively this season. Now, that being said, you have that horrible turnover last night that leads to the game-winning goal. So what you have to remember, though, is that there's still growth here, and you're still going to make mistakes. No player's perfect. It's just that the spotlight is so much more on Kyrou because historically he has not been good enough defensively. Straight-legging it, you name it. I think he's been so much better. I think it's going to continue to come. And bottom line, you're not going to win games 1-0. The Blues didn't score enough goals last night. End of story. And if you're going to hang the whole game on one player, I don't like that. I don't think it's right. But I think he's definitely still growing in that area, and I think there's been strides.
Hey, Mike, we talked about this yesterday, a little bit today, too, from somebody who's been a part of rebuilds in the NHL, who's seen retools in the NHL. At what point do you think retool fatigue sets in for Blues fans?
I think it might happen soon, unfortunately, and that's disappointing to me because it's a team obviously so near and dear to my heart, and I do have experience with this. You know why? I wasn't a very good goaltender, so every bad team in the NHL needed me as their number 3, as I wasn't very expensive to get, and they figured I could just be the layover guy until their prospects were ready. Guess what? During a rebuild. So I would encourage Blues fans to realize that the pipeline to this team with the prospects is stronger than it's ever been. You've got an unbelievably exciting defenseman in Philip Broberg, who's just been awesome, guys. Just awesome for me. There are elements to this team that are absolutely worth watching in games. And whether you're a goaltending fan, whether it's watching Broberg take strides, whether it's seeing Dilla Holloway come in, and even homegrown like a Bolduc, guys, even Nathan Walker, I love watching the dude. So I just hope fans stick with it because it is a bit of a process. I still think the Blues could contend when Thomas comes back. It's just they need to get points until Robert Thomas comes back, and then they got to stay healthy. If the Blues aren't healthy, it's going to be a tough year. Factor that in, Blues fans. This team's going to be good. They're going to be contenders, at least for a little while here in terms of the playoff picture. Stanley Cups, you give it 2 or 3 years, I think they'll be back in that window.
He's Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. He does so on behalf of Macadoodles, where he is right now. You can hear it behind him, certainly with all the banging taking place. That is because he is at an active construction site, a site that will be completed and ready to go 2 weeks from today. Mike, tell us a little bit about the schedule, what the plans are from here, and what people can expect from Macadoodles.
November 15th, 2 weeks from today. It's Friday. We will open up. We will be coming to you live from the grand opening next week. It's going to be amazing. I tell you what, from 3 to 5, we just got confirmation yesterday from Cry Distributing out here. We're going to have a Clydesdale.
What?
From 3 to 5 next Friday, full regalia. It's going to be like Busch Stadium on the first day. We're going to have those allocated tequilas sitting out there. We're going to have some allocated bourbons. We're going to have the wine room full stock to 2,500 different wines. We've hired some amazing people just in the last day or two. The best customer service you'll get. We're a Missouri-owned company. We are a Missouri-run company. We are a Missouri franchise through and through. We know our stuff when it comes to this. We're going to come in. We're going to have fun, be casual, laid back. It's not going to be a stuffy atmosphere. So come see us. Macadoodles, Dardian Prairie, Bryan and Feisey Road, 2 weeks, November 15th.
We'll look forward to that. Mike, thanks for the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next Friday.
Appreciate it. Fans out there, appreciate you dealing with the bang. And hey, remember, this is a construction site, so you're getting extra ambiance this week.
That's right. He's Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. Joins us each and every Friday here at BK and Ferrario. Coming up next, we're going to get into our NFL weekend look ahead here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues were unable to snap out of their losing streak last night as it was extended to 3 games. They fell to the Flyers 2-1 after battling back and tying the game in the third period thanks to Nathan Walker's first goal of the season. A bad turnover by Jordan Kyrou in the neutral zone resulted in a Bobby Brink game-winning goal for the Flyers as the Blues fall to below 500 at 5-6-0. Blues will be back in action tomorrow as they welcome in Craig Berube and the Toronto Maple Leafs, who they just beat last week in Toronto 5-1. That pregame will start at 5 o'clock here on 101 ESPN. Puck drop at 6. And then on Sunday, you will hear NFL all day. The Bills and Dolphins will kick us off at 11 o'clock, and then Cardinals and Bears will follow that up at 3:05. And rounding out the night for Sunday Night Football will be Vikings and Colts. That kickoff at 7:20. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It is time for our NFL weekend look ahead. We do our matchup of the week, the upset of the week, the storyline of the week. We get to it all right here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, we'll start with you. What is your matchup of the week? If you could sit down in front of the television on Sunday and only watch one of these games, which one are you going with?
Man, I don't really feel like there's that great of matchups this week.
I think there's one, but it depends on if he's available. I would say Packers versus the Lions is an excellent game if Jordan Love plays. And
he practiced today, by the way.
So I was
limited or full.
That I did not
was last
see.
week,
that
or yesterday. That was the first one, but the other one that I would put it with, like, there's 2 games that I think are really fun. Lions-Packers was number 1 on that list, but tied for it is Rams and Seahawks. And honestly, it's just because I think that division is so freaking wide open that the winner might be coming out of that matchup between Rams and Seahawks now that the Rams are at least somewhat healthy. So, like, both games that I'm going to be, like, tuned in are going to be in the afternoon slate.
I think the game that's got the chance to be sneaky good is Cowboys and Falcons.
Agreed.
Because the Falcons, though, I get it. They're 5-3. They've been playing better football of late. I don't know. For some reason, I still don't trust their fantasy offense. And with that being said, I can see where the Cowboys maybe keep it close. Maybe offensively they get things back on track. I mean, this is only a 3.5-point game, and the total's at 51.5 right now. So Vegas is at least expecting this to be a little bit of a shootout. So I can see where that one ends up being the sneaky good matchup of the weekend.
All right, next one up here. I told you guys my matchup of the weekend is Packers versus the Lions. Even if it is Malik that's out there, I think the Packers are still interesting in that game. We've seen this year, Malik Willis has not lost a start in his NFL career, which is wild to say, but
meanwhile, Tennessee's
true.
like, hey, Will Levis.
Yeah.
He's good.
The Packers have a top 5 coach in the NFL, and if they have to go with Malik Willis, they will have a really good game plan to go up against the Lions. So even if he's a starter, I still give them at least a chance to be able to win that one. All right, Alex, if you had to pick an upset going into this weekend, typically we would say more than 3 points, but it's the NFL this year. There's a lot of close lines. So what is your upset pick going into this weekend?
Mine's the Raiders over the Bengals. I think this awful season is just going to keep getting worse for Cincinnati fans. They're once again, sounds like they're without T. Higgins, and we've seen an awful lot this season. When they don't have T. Higgins, their offense doesn't look very good. I don't like the Raiders. I think the Raiders are trash, but I think the Raiders' defense can at least put enough pressure on Joe Burrow to where that game is a lot closer, and Vegas gives himself a chance.
If that happens, I'm out. I'm done. Joe Burrow, this is your chance. You better go out there and win this game against the Vegas Raiders. Because if you lose this game, you basically can't lose the rest of the way.
I don't know how you're not done already.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because the AFC's terrible. Like, that's it. And if they end up losing this game, you've got on the road at Baltimore going the following week on a Thursday night, and that could effectively end their season. So, yeah, you have to win this game. If they lose, and you're right, Alex, it's done.
My upset pick of the week, I'm going with what I had in the pick. It was my 1-point play. I think the Dolphins can beat the Bills. They've got a good defense.
A trash pick.
I think Miami, look, last week I think was kind of knocking the cobwebs out with Tua. I think you're going to see him and that offense get back on track. Even if Tyreek Hill's a little banged up, I still think Tyreek Hill is one of the best wide receivers in football in that offense. I think they're going to surprise people. I think they're going to go on the road and beat Buffalo this weekend.
Wow. That would be
bad for Buffalo.
That would be bad for you and me, buddy.
Yeah, it would. But you know what? We're in that together, man, so our boat will sink at the same time.
All right, I've got another one. My upset pick going into this weekend is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars with a caveat. If Brian Thomas Jr. is out in this game, I'm not picking the Jaguars. But if Brian Thomas Jr. plays, what?
What is that? You're supposed to be making a bold prediction right now, and here you are. If this doesn't happen, which we won't know till Sunday, don't pretend I didn't say it.
Also, man, that doesn't
That's
matter.
not a bold
Trevor
prediction.
Lawrence is still their quarterback.
See, this is what I'm saying. It's a very bold prediction.
Say it with your chest right now. Are the Jags winning this game?
If Brian Thomas Jr. plays, I think they will. If he
Just get off
doesn't,
the fence, man.
I think
Seriously.
Take the fence post out of your mouth.
If you want me to go a step further, I think the Colts are beating the Vikings on Sunday night.
Okay,
now we're
that's
talking.
bold. Now we're getting bold.
The Colts are a 5-point underdog in that game. I think we've seen Joe Flacco is just significantly better than Anthony Richardson. And Josh Downs suddenly turns into a legitimate number one wide receiver whenever Joe Flacco's in there. So I'll go with the Colts, say it with your chest, as a winner over the Minnesota Vikings. Alex, what do you think is going to be the biggest storyline on Monday? The Monday morning storyline that we're talking about, maybe an overreaction, if you will, coming off of this weekend. If T-Bone's right.
Yeah, if T-Bone's right,
if the Bengals lose, that's the story.
I'm not even putting that trash into the atmosphere, though, because I don't think that one's going to happen. Honestly, I think what the biggest storyline, at least the headliner for me, is going to be probably between that Rams and Seahawks game. Whoever wins that game, I wonder if you're walking out, you're walking out of that going, are they the best team in the NFC West? Because I don't know if anybody is going to be putting any stock into the 49ers until they see them at full health. And the Seahawks are coming off of a loss, Rams coming off of a win. If the Rams string back-to-back wins together and their offense looks as good as we think it is, win healthy, you're probably walking out of that going, Rams are the best team in the NFC West, might be the second or third best team in the NFC.
I think the game that is going to end up becoming the overreaction Monday game and create some of the headlines is Broncos at Ravens. Because I think with the Ravens, you'll see Deontay Johnson in the mix for the first time. I think if they end up winning that game and they beat the Broncos, and if they cover, because they're a 10-point favorite in this game, I can totally see on Monday where everybody's like, wow, look at Baltimore. They are the team that's going to beat the Chiefs. They've got the best offense in the league with Lamar and Derrick Henry, now all these weapons that they've got at wide receiver. And then it's kind of the opposite for the Broncos, to where if the Broncos end up winning this game, I think it won't be as big of a headline, but it will be the Broncos are a playoff team. Bo Nix is going to get the Broncos to the playoffs, even though what is really the case is the defense of the Broncos will get Denver back to the promised land.
Speaking of that defense, they are one of the best, not just in the NFL this season, but according to some of the advanced metrics, they're one of the best defenses in the last 25 years. Now, I don't know that I buy that. I don't know that I believe that this Broncos defense is that good. I think some of it is people play a little differently against the Broncos because they know, hey, if we get to 20 points, we're beating this team because the Broncos offense just isn't capable of putting up those kinds of points. But they've been excellent on the defensive side of the ball so far this season. This is an interesting test. They're first in the NFL in goal-to-go efficiency, second in yards per play allowed, third in yards allowed in total, and second in the NFL in points allowed so far this season. It's going to be an interesting test for the Baltimore Ravens. Could go the other way as well. If the Broncos beat the Ravens this weekend, it's like, Broncos a little more frisky than we expected coming into the season. Could they be that sneaky, interesting team going into the postseason?
And if the Broncos beat the Ravens and the Bills beat the Dolphins, you're walking out of there saying the Bills might be the best team aside from the Chiefs in the AFC, not Baltimore.
All right, last thing here. For me, I think the game that we will be looking at on Monday is Arizona versus Chicago. If the Bears come out and lay another egg in this one, and they lose that way against Washington, and then lose again this week against Arizona, not just on a Hail Mary, but Tyreek Stevenson taunting the crowd, looking completely unprepared, the coaching staff seemingly not having the full pulse on this team. They have 3 wins this year against a depleted LA team with the Rams, Carolina, who doesn't beat anybody, and Jacksonville, who's awful. That's it. Oh, they got one against Tennessee as well. Excuse me.
They're also awful.
That's like when there was that no-hitter against the Pittsburgh Pirates a few years ago.
Yeah, it was Detroit, not a real team.
Yeah, didn't count.
Or White Sox, that's what it was.
Unbelievable.
This is the type of game that you have to win if you're the Bears. If you're Matt Eberflus, flush that game from last week. Let's go get a W. Let's see what they look like. And then you've got another game next week against New England. Get ourselves back on track. 6-3. That's a good spot to be in. If you lose this one, though, whew, pressure's on.
Trade deadline's next week, right, in the NFL? If Arizona loses, do you trade James Conner, Budda Baker, a couple of these guys off that team?
I don't think they will because they're still going to be like a game out of first place. And you got the Jets, Seahawks coming up.
Just wonder if
still
you could
be right in it.
Because I saw people talking about Dallas trying to go after James Conner since their running game's so trash. I just wonder if you try and see if you can get some type of asset. Because, I mean, look, Arizona's still in it like you said. But you look at the Rams that are healthy now, San Francisco getting healthier. And if you drop a game to the Bears at home, kind of have to be honest with yourself and say, I don't know where we're going to finish, but it's not there.
Totally. He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Huge shout out to Grant Francis, who did a fantastic job for us today back in the studio. We've been broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. A little bit of news to pass along from the St. Louis Cardinals. Not anything of significance, but they have made a slight move.
How dare you?
They have picked up Rodri Munoz.
Tell me how you really feel.
Pitcher from the Miami Marlins. He did pitch for them last year, did not do so well. Had a 6.5 ERA over the course of 17 starts for the Marlins last year. He's 24 years old. Was previously a free agent acquisition for them from the Dominican Republic. None of his numbers are particularly good other than the fact that he does throw 95. So he's got some velo. He's a big guy. Did not have any success with it last year. Cardinals hoping they can bring him in and potentially fix him. Alex, final thing for today. What is your biggest takeaway from what we saw from the Blues last night?
That they need more finishers. I thought they played well against Philadelphia. I thought they generated scoring chances, and frankly, I think they forced Philadelphia in their zone more than Philly would have liked. Problem was they didn't convert on anything, whether that's bodies in front of the net, whether that's puck possession, or whether that's just pure skill rather than hitting the post 2-4 times. They need guys who can put the puck in the back of the net. Some of this might be snake-bitten. Some of this just might be the product of bad bounces. But for St. Louis, with these injuries, when you don't have Robert Thomas, you're going to have to bear down and find different ways to score goals, and you just didn't do that enough last night against Philly.
T-Bone?
I agree they don't have finishers. And it's tough to grade them, but I continue to remain frustrated, or I don't know if frustrated is the right word. I just am starting to question more and more of what the direction is. Who are the pillars that are going to lead the Blues out of this? And look, I still think you should expect a little more out of Buchnevich. I get he's playing out of position, but at some point, it seems the Blues are going to stick with him at center. To me, you got to get more out of Pavel Buchnevich. Your best players need to start playing like your best players, and I just haven't felt that way.
And as the 6'1" hate knows, I don't care about losing. I'm accepting of the losing right now. I thought they played a better game overall last night. Your top line left a lot to be desired, but when the top line wasn't on the ice, the other three lines played pretty well. They outplayed the Philadelphia Flyers, and you got a little unlucky. I know people don't like hearing it, but a little unlucky. Had some good chances on net. Jordan Kyrou especially hit the post a couple of times. He had a bad moment, a really bad moment at the end of the game. 3 minutes left. You got to just put that one in there, put it deep, live to fight another day, hopefully get the point in regulation, and then see what happens for you in overtime. He didn't do that. He tried to make a play, ends up getting turned over. Defense has to be there as well. It's just bad moment for everybody on the team there. I thought it was a much better game overall, though, than what we had seen in Montreal. You'd like to see more scoring, obviously, but this is a team that we're not anticipating being consistently getting to 4 goals. So they're going to have to win games where it's 2-1. 3-2. That's the way that this team's going to win moving forward. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Enjoy all the sports this weekend. Plenty of football on the slate. Also a Blues game as well. I know Alex is excited about watching
Maple Leafs,
that.
baby.
You'll hear it right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. For Grant Francis, who again did a fantastic job for us back in the studio today, I'm Brandon Kiley. We will talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. Fastlane is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.